Of the prayer.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce our supervisor of election, Craig Latimer, and he's agreed to do our invocation. Please stand for the invocation and stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you. Good morning. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the gifts that you give us each and every day. We ask today that you reach down and touch all of our city council members as they make decisions about our city. We also thank you, Lord, for the first responders that we have that continue to keep all of us safe everywhere in the city and in the county. Dear Lord, I'd like to end this with a special prayer that we have as the supervisor of elections. Dear Lord, we pray that you watch over all the candidates as they go about campaigning. We ask that you watch over them and allow them to campaign with civility and with passion. We also ask that they campaign with truthfulness. But at the end of the day, dear Lord, what we pray for the most is that whoever wins, wins big so we don't have a recount.
Amen.
We ask this all in your name. Amen. United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Suarez. Cohen. Maniscalco. Capeen.
Present.
Miranda. Vieira. Reddick.
Okay. First, we have a city council commendation to Hillsborough Community College that is to be done by Councilman Reddick, who is not here. So, if I may, I ask for a motion for approval of the agenda. So move. We have a motion by Councilman Maniscalco, a second by Councilman Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. I do not see Councilman Reddick here for number one. So if I may, I will proceed with number two.
Chair, I would suggest that the maker of the motion is not here, but the seconder is. You might want to have him do it as you chair the meeting.
Okay.
That might be, if Mr. Maniscalco will be willing to do that.
Would you, we do?
To the HC?
Yeah.
Okay. A good suggestion.
And Chair, could I ask you, is Chair not going to be here today, or just a?
He's just late.
Okay, thank you.
This is first.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was.
That's it. You do go ahead and do that, and then the next. I'm saying the next.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Go ahead. My apologies. I didn't see that.
How are you?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm really honored to present this to you because as a former student there at HCC, I had nothing but great memories. I started at the campus on the Air Force Base when they allowed civilians to do so.
Good.
Went to Ybor campus, went to Dale Mabry campus, and met wonderful people, friends that I still have to this day. So
Right.
HCC's always had a special place in my heart, a special place for this community because it's helped lift up so many. And celebrating 50 years is huge. So I'll read this real quick. In recognition of Hillsborough Community College's 50th anniversary, Hillsborough Community College has provided 5 decades of innovation, inspiration, and outstanding growth in the Tampa Bay community. Founded as Hillsborough Junior College on October 4th, 1967, the institution of higher learning held its first classes for 1,625 students in temporary facilities at Hillsborough High School in Tampa on September 30th, 1968. Hillsborough Community College, also known as HCC, has delivered teaching and learning opportunities that empowers a diverse population of more than 44,000 students annually to achieve their educational goals and become contributing members of the local community and a global society. Tampa City Council extends best wishes to HCC for its excellent contribution with assisting students and achieving their dreams. Congratulations.
Thank you. First, on behalf of the more than 2,600 faculty and staff at HCC, and believe it or not, Councilman, we're at 46,000 students now instead of 44. We say thank you to the council. HCC has a history of being a great community partner. As you can understand, community is part of our name, and we take that very seriously. Over the years, we've continued to increase our economic impact in this community. Right now, we're at $1.3 billion annually on economic impact in this community. And believe me, through the partnerships and relationships we have with the City Council, for example, only enhances our ability to increase that. So on behalf, again, of all the 46,000 students and the faculty and staff of HCC, we say thank you. We're 1 million strong alumni here in Hillsborough County. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, and congratulations, sir. Next, we go to new business under A for Mr. Craig Latimer to come forward, if you would, sir.
Can I start with another prayer?
Please.
Good morning. As you know, the City of Tampa election is well underway. My office has already sent out almost 58,000 vote-by-mail ballots, and we've already received back almost 10,000 of those ballots. We've mailed out sample ballots. City residents that didn't get a vote-by-mail ballot that are eligible and registered for this election should be getting that sample ballot starting yesterday, probably. The majority of what we do to conduct elections is established in Florida statute, but we do have some discretion, especially when it comes to designating locations and hours of operation for early voting. This is important because jurisdictions vary in size and there's no one-size-fits-all. During every election, we balance accessibility to voting with a fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers. It's our goal to make voting as convenient as possible. We do not want voters waiting in line. We make prudent staffing decisions and base our planning and recommendations on data from previous elections. During the 2011 Tampa election, we had an open mayor's seat. We had approximately 190,000 registered voters at that time and had a 22% turnout. In 2015, that turnout was 13%. In 2011, we had 3 options for voting: vote by mail with the prepaid return by my office, 7 days of early voting, including 2 weekend days, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. That is also consistent with the same early voting hours that we had for all primary elections and presidential primary elections. Also voting on election day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. This year we'll have about 73 polling locations throughout the city for election day voting. The 2011 election went very smoothly, and we stuck to that same plan in 2015. And that's the plan that we recommended to the City of Tampa that was agreed upon for the current election. We currently have about 231,000 registered voters in the City of Tampa, and we're well equipped to handle a more robust turnout than previous municipal elections. If you have any questions about the election, I'd be more than happy to answer those at this time.
Yeah. Okay, you go.
Well, the first question, and the reason why this was brought up and asked you to be here today.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Councilman.
All right, the reason why we put this on the agenda for this to be discussed today is because I have been bombarded with phone calls, text messages, and people are not familiar with the hours of early voting. It changed from 10 to 6. And then people were telling me they were going on the website and they can't find the voting location. And so explain that to us. Early voting, and it's from the hours of 10 to 6, and it's going to be for 1 week. That's my understanding?
That is correct.
In the previous, what we used to do, 2 weeks?
No, sir. So it's been 1 week since 2011. And as a matter of fact, the former mayor, Pam Iorio, insisted at that time to have at least 2 weekend days, because prior to that, it was only 5 days. It's up to the city's discretion for early voting days and hours. For instance, Plant City, who I also conduct the election for, they only do 2 days of early voting. So this has been the same model that we've been using since 2011.
Who made that determination? Administration?
We make a recommendation to the city, to the mayor's office, based on the previous data that we have. And this is the recommendation that we made, and it was accepted by the mayor's office. I would point out to you, just to go back, because I keep talking about data. In the 2011 election, which again was an open mayor's seat, a mirror of this race, if you will, there was a grand total of 6,658 people that voted at early voting. In the 2015 election, that number was 2,596. Again, these were extremely poor turnouts for both of these elections. We're hoping for a more robust election. I know that the candidates have been out working hard to get their bases out. And just like the midterm election, you know, we average about a 50% turnout. We had a 62% turnout in that midterm election.
Last question. What type of advertisement or promotion you have done, your office have done, to let people know the hours and the location?
Certainly. Everyone that doesn't receive a vote-by-mail ballot receives a sample ballot. That information is on there. We also have it on our website. We also use a tremendous amount of social media, and I can tell you that the candidates retweet our social media constantly, and that information is on there.
Okay, thank you. Yes. All right.
Mr. Latimer, thank you very much for being here and presenting the facts. The turnout in 2011 was only 13%. Since you're the guru of elections, what is the percent of turnout going to be this election?
I'm going to go out on a limb,
I don't wanna put you in the
Councilman
hot
Miranda.
spot.
No, I'm going to go out on a limb and give you that I think it's going to be robust.
And robust, and what amount?
All I can go on is the data that we have. I think that we're going to have a better than 22% turnout, though.
All right, that's all I wanted to
Just
know.
because of that. What you have to remember, though, too, that was 190,000 registered voters. Now we're up to 231,000. So we've got to get a lot more voters out just to hit that number.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. And you, by the way, every time I've been to your office, they've been very courteous, very upfront, and I've seen other candidates in there, and they treat everybody the same, and I'm real happy to see that very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments.
It's a good thing.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Yes, I was wondering, so what amount of absentee ballots have been returned so far this year?
It's right at about 17%, I think, of the ballots we mailed have been returned.
70%, do we have a number? Is it?
Yes, ma'am. It's just under 10,000. We've mailed out almost
And compared
58,000.
to 11, how's that?
In 2011, we had 9,856 ballots returned.
Total,
Vote by mail
vote by mail?
for the total election.
Okay, so this is, all right, so
Now,
we're.
let me back up and say that
Yes.
this is kind of interesting. In 2011, 60% of the people that voted on election day. Okay, 60% of the people that voted on election day. In 2015, 62% of the people that voted by mail.
Okay,
And only 28% voted on election day. And that's a trend that we've seen. In this last election, 71% of our voters voted prior to election day.
okay. I wanted to ask you also where we took away a weekend, we had 2 weekends. And I'm thinking, since the hours at 10 a.m., people that go to work, if they don't make it on that weekend, then they have election day to make it before 7 a.m. or sometime by 7 p.m. And that could be pretty, I know that can be pretty, as someone that had a business, could be very difficult to get to. So I'm wondering if that 10 a.m. might have brought the number down on early vote, because you don't get those early people on the way to work. It's not worth, they can't get there.
Well, thank you for that advertisement, Councilwoman Capeen, because that's exactly what vote by mail is for too. And people can, we pay the return postage. They can also drop off vote by mail ballots at any of our early vote sites
Right.
during hours. Now, I'd like to go back though, because we had 2 weekends because there was no Sunday voting previously. In 2011,
Right.
it was Saturday, no Sunday, then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And again, that was Mayor Iorio, that wanted the weekend voting. In 2015, we were able to go ahead and run it straight through, which we did. It was started on a Monday and went right on through Saturday and Sunday. And that's the exact model that we have this year, except we're changing it because Sunday would fall on Easter for the runoff election. So that one is going to be Saturday to Saturday.
Okay. That's interesting, because Pam Iorio was supervisor of elections for 12 years. And of course, when she came on and she suggested that, we did not have the vote by mail as prolific as it is today. So I understand that. Again, I really feel the hours need to be earlier. I think people on their way to work would definitely do that. Have we ever had that before?
No, ma'am.
Never.
It's never been 7 to 7. And again, this is the same model that we use for the regular primary election and the presidential
Is this the
preference
same
primary.
hours during during the presidential, so the national elections, November,
In November, I always use the maximum amount of days and the maximum amount of time.
which is?
7 to 7, and it's for 14 days.
Okay, there's the difference, because when we didn't have that, I remember being in a campaign and worrying, because I lived out in Lutz, getting to my precinct after work and not being able to make it. And it was really daunting to me. So that 7 to 7 was very important to me. When you live, and you know, this is the county, the city. Listen, this morning I got a text from my legislative aide. She says, you know you got a problem when the toll road is not moving with the traffic. So we have that problem where people cannot get to where they're within a certain amount of time, you know, within the time that they need. So I'm very much in favor of giving as much time as possible. Now, was this because of a budget? Was this in order to?
You know, the bottom line to this is that the city of Tampa pays me to conduct this election. And as I've suggested before, if this election was moved to the general election, it would not cost the city anything, and you would have 2 weeks of voting from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It would save the taxpayers about $1 million because that's what this election is going to cost.
Yes, I've heard that before. It's a good suggestion. I would be willing to go that route. But how would that work since we have an election in March and then the general will be in 2020, right?
Yeah, that would be something that you would have to work out with your charter through ordinance.
Okay. I'm pretty satisfied with your answers. However, I would love to have seen, I personally think we need to give our voters as much opportunity as possible to get to the polls and vote, whether it's by mail, early vote, or on the day of election. It's, I think, you know, I'm even willing to go as far as the election day being a holiday and get everybody, of course, they'll all go to the beach. No, not real, after they vote.
Well, I certainly, you know, I see my job as making sure that, first off, every person that's eligible to register to vote does in fact get registered. And those people that are registered and eligible to vote have the opportunity to get out and vote. And that's why we offer all three methods and promote them quite heavily. I'll tell you something else that might help. I recently looked at the city website. There's absolutely nothing on it to do with the city election or hours of operation or anything else. So that may be
You know
another
what?
way
I'm
to
not surprised
get the word out.
At all. I'm not surprised. Is anyone else surprised? We don't administer that, so that would be the mayor. It's his responsibility. Also, I want to say this, that about the hours. Oh my goodness, it went to the clouds. I'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, Craig, I want to thank you again for the outstanding job you and your staff are doing. But when I go back in history and realize that back in the 50s and the 60s, when the percent was much higher than what it is today, I believe, and I want you to verify these things.
It was.
And there was no early voting.
Correct.
There was absent by mail. You could only be in the hospital or
Excuse.
outside the country to
Excuse,
vote.
yes.
Yet you give them all the time to need a vote and less people show up. And when you talk about money, just in this election alone, between the mayor's race and the council race, I guarantee you there's $3.5 to $4 million being spent. And if the public doesn't know there's an election, with all the social media, with all the money and all the direct mail going to who? To the people who voted in the last two elections. So if that doesn't increase, we got a problem, and it ain't us.
Yeah, and you know, that's interesting. There's an estimate out that for every vote by mail ballot that I send out, there's 10 additional pieces of mail that go with it in the form of campaign mail.
That's right.
Mr. Suarez.
Yes, Mr. Latimer, just could you announce where the early voting sites are? I mean, publicly, so people know exactly where to go.
Absolutely. And again, these are the same ones we've been using for quite a while, and except one exception. Cyrus Green Recreation Center is now the early vote site because C. Blythe Andrews Library is under construction still. We can't wait to get back in there. North Tampa Library, the County Center, New Tampa Library, Jan Platt Library, West Tampa Library, and our Gilder Election Center out on Falkenberg Road.
Okay.
And at any time, people can go to our offices and get an over-the-counter ballot, which is a vote-by-mail ballot. People are taking advantage of that also. Early voting begins on February the 25th, and will run through March 3rd, and that'll be from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. for 7 days straight. Election day, of course, March 5th, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Ms. Lapine? and
Yes,
wrap it up.
I was gonna say, and
you know-
I've got a sample ballot here to show you with the 18 amendments, what it looks like, so.
Yes, I've gotten calls on that. Maybe because of the forms, maybe that needs to be organized, because I think, how many forms has the mayoral race had? 21, 22 so far? 21,000. 21,000? And I said, the Society of Left-Handed People want to have a mayoral forum. Everybody wants to be relative. They have to go, but at the same time, I think the exposure's been even more. So that's where this might have come from. But I want to tell you, thank you for being so gracious and coming here. And I want to tell you, thank you for putting on CTTV what the mayor did not do, which was not put on our website that there's an election and the election day. So I want to thank you for being so gracious to come here and help us with that. Thank you so much.
There's politics and elections. My office does elections.
Yeah, well, it's the responsibility. I mean, this is the city. We're going to complain about the turnout, and we don't even have it on our website. That is just beyond belief to me, but that's what it is.
I'm going to yield to Mr. Vieira. I want to make a motion to have the mayor and the city staff to post on their website the city election, the polling sites,
Second.
the time of operation, that it'll be open, so that the public will be aware that goes on the city website. They'll be aware that there's a city election. And so that's the least the administration can do.
And Councilman Suarez?
And could you, if you could, Chair, could you add in a link to the Supervisor for Election website, which even has more information about voting and everything else? It's great to have it on ours, but just in case there's some additional questions, that they have a hyperlink that goes directly to the Supervisor for Election.
Yeah, I would include that as part of the motion.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And I second that.
We have a motion by Councilman Reddick, a second by Councilman Capeen. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, we go to item number 2. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. It is my great pleasure here today to present a Tampa City Council commendation to a very special man in his family, Mr. Roberto Pisano, who is here with his son, Rafael Pisano, who's also with Tampa Fire Rescue, his daughters Ann K. Pisano and Carmen Pisano, his soon-to-be daughter-in-law Linda Varga, and his son-in-law Miguel Rosales. We're also honored here today to have a great many guests here with us today, and I'm not going to take the time to name everybody. I know we have Marilyn Alvarez with the Sheriff's Office, Pepe Prado with Hillsborough County firefighters. We have Colonel DJ Reyes, Julie Reyes, Judge Jared Smith, Marcia Mejia with Congresswoman Kathy Castor's office, Mr. Pedro Fuentes Cid, a 16-year political prisoner from Cuba. We're honored to have you here. And last but certainly not least, my dear friend, Colonel Orlando Rodriguez, and there he is, who I love to death. We are here today to give a Tampa City Council commendation to a man who is a very, very special man. And this is a very, very, very special date for this man. In 1961, this man who is here before us was captured when he was in combat. Wow, what's that? When he was in combat. When he was in combat in Cuba and would be held as a political prisoner, not for 18 days, not for 1.8 years, but for 18 years, 18 años. This man was a political prisoner in Cuba. I couldn't even begin to imagine the hell that this man went through. He's talked about it before. We won't get into it here, but just to note that it is compelling and it is worthy of so much respect. In 1978, the United States under President Jimmy Carter would negotiate to have 3,600 political prisoners from Cuba released. This man would be one of them. And in February of 1979, 40 years ago this month, this man would be released as a political prisoner and would come here to the United States. What makes Roberto special is not just his captivity, but is what he did when he got out. I couldn't even imagine being in prison for 1.8 years or 18 days, much less 18 years. And after this man got out, he did many things. He spoke up for his values. He spoke up for his worldview. He spoke out for a free Cuba. And he raised a family, including 3 children, who revere and respect this man beyond all that can be revered and respected. We know what makes Tampa unique. What makes Tampa unique among so many things is the stories of the people. It's our American journeys as immigrants. One of the great American stories here in the city of Tampa constantly is that of the Cuban American community, and one of the greatest presences in the Cuban American community is people like my family, like the Pisano families, who are Cuban exiles. Mr. Maniscalco's family as well, who left Cuba in the Castro era. I can tell you, being a son of Cuban exiles, that stories like this of political prisoners, people who were on the front line in the tyranny that we have had in Cuba for so many decades, are sacred. They were sacred to me growing up, and that is why I am so privileged to honor this man. When I think of Roberto Pisano and all of the terrible things he's gone through in life, I think about my favorite poem by Jose Marti, where it talks about a man who, whether he meets a friend or foe, he has for them a white rose. And this is a man that gives everybody a white rose, even those who have done great injustice to him. That poem reads, just shortly, I have a white rose to tend in July's and January. I give it to the true friend who offers his frank hand to me, and for the cruel one whose blows break the heart by which I live. Thistle nor thorn do I give, for him too I have a white rose. We honor this man. This man and his family has often come to us and spoken before us and advocated. Sometimes we agree with him, sometimes we disagree with him, but we always respect him and we always respect his story. And today we don't just respect his story, but we honor his story. So it is my pleasure and my real honor to give this man, Mr. Roberto Pisano, and to the entire Pisano family, a Tampa City Council commendation. And I also have, if I may, a statue of Jose Marti that I also want to give to him. And we also have, because I can't think of anybody whose life better exemplifies the value of that poet and that warrior, Jose Marti, than Mr. Roberto Pisano. And we also have Ms. Marilyn Alvarez with the Sheriff's Office, who also has a citation for Mr. Pisano, if you want to present it.
Yes, on behalf of Sheriff Chad Cronister, our sheriff, we want to present this commendation to Roberto Pisano for his 40th anniversary and his release from political prison.
Y si tú quieres hablar, tú puedes.
My English is no good. I prefer my daughter translate it for me. I'm sorry. Primero quiero darle las gracias a los Estados Unidos de América.
First of all, I would like to thank the United States of America
por haberme abierto los brazos a la libertad
for opening its arms to me and for freedom.
que la tiranía impuesta por más de 60 años en mi país me negó.
That the tyranny that has been imposed on my country for over 60 years denied me.
No puedo dejar de reconocer que Tampa es mi segunda patria.
I would be remiss.
Mi madre adoptiva es Tampa.
I would be remiss if I didn't thank Tampa because she's my adoptive mother.
Y cuando yo escogí a Tampa para vivir aquí era porque yo soy un fiel seguidor de este gran hombre.
When I chose Tampa to be my home, it was because I am a loyal follower of this great man, referring to Jose Marti.
Martí le decía Tampa, mi pueblo fiel.
Marti always referred to Tampa as his loyal home.
Nosotros le agregamos después aquí, en nuestra trayectoria de lucha, Tampa, cuna de la independencia cubana. Aquí se crearon
Cuban exiles have adopted the phrase that Tampa is the crib of the independence.
Aquí se crearon todas las bases de la lucha que José Martí llevó a Cuba
All of the bases that Jose Marti took to Cuba during the revolution were all based here in Tampa, all of his principles,
para que la independencia de Cuba se hiciera realidad.
so that Cuba's independence from Spain would have been reality.
Quizás ustedes duden de lo que yo voy a decir. Yo estoy convencido que Tampa repite la historia y nosotros vamos a celebrar la libertad de Cuba. No, a lo mejor no es hoy o mañana, pero yo creo que en un plazo no muy lejano.
Perhaps you may not believe what I'm about to say, but I do feel that Tampa will be a place for the beginnings of independence for Cuba once again.
Estaba oyendo yo un discurso del ministro de Relaciones Exteriores de Cuba ahora contestándole a los países que están apoyando la ayuda humanitaria a Venezuela.
The Minister of External Affairs in Cuba recently made some comments about humanitarian aid being directed towards Venezuela.
Y él decía que Cuba llevaba 60 años de revolución y no se daban por vencidos.
He was stating that Cuba has more than 60 years of revolution and they do not want to give up on that.
Yo llevo un poquito más luchando contra ellos que ellos en el poder.
I have more than that time dedicated to freedom of Cuba and trying to free it of tyranny.
Y a pesar de que ya hoy tengo 80 años, jamás me voy a rendir por lograr la libertad de Cuba.
And
Mientras yo respire, voy a luchar por mi país.
As long
Muchísimas
as
gracias.
I have breath in me, I will continue to fight. And I have over 80 years.
Muchísimas gracias al Consejo de la Ciudad de Tampa.
I will. Give me a- Thank you. Thank you to all the members of the city council. Thank you.
Y ahora sí, yo
Thank you so much.
if council members.
Mr. Maniscalco.
Para decir solo que es un tremendo honor estar aquí con usted hoy. Así todos aquí saben de su lucha y su sacrificio por tantos años. Gracias.
No, gracias a ustedes por permitirme llegar hasta aquí.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Ms. Capini.
Thank you.
Primero, señor, nunca disculpe por tener acento en inglés. Yo tengo acento en español, pero eso quiere decir que hablas dos idiomas y es un placer conocerlo, señor. Y sí, y la historia de Tampa lo estudian en Cuba por Martí en las escuelas, porque Martí empezó aquí en Tampa y tú tienes razón de venir acá y a luchar con nosotros para la libertad. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you.
¡Viva Cuba libre!
Mira, mira.
Disculpe, is that excuse yourself to the school?
Excuse me, or I'm sorry.
Yes, when he said I'm sorry. Okay. I wasn't sure.
All right, we will go to public comments. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. The Tampa City Council welcomes public comment at this time. 30 minutes have been set aside this morning for items not set for a public hearing. If you're here to speak on a matter that is set for a public hearing, you will have that opportunity later during today's meeting. Speakers addressing items on the agenda will be given preference before citizens speaking on non-agenda matters. Each speaker is given 3 minutes. Please begin by stating your name for the record, and it is requested that your comments are not directed personally to a council member or staff member, but rather issues directed to the council as a body. City Council appreciates your cooperation in maintaining orderly conduct and proper decorum. Thank you.
Hi, I am Worldwide Global Sovereign Despot. For the living record, for the living will, for the record, by the record. That's just that one in against tax against U.S. Look, I need to explain this. This relationship between America and U.S. Do we have a real relationship, or are you still pretending to be our occupiers as well? Just as the Cuban man just talked about being a political prisoner, us natives has been political prisoners for 2019 years. Now, the freedom process have already went through, as Mr. Trump sat on that seat for 2 years to buy time, to where that time has been bought already as well. Trump and Hillary, that's y'all's business people for Africa and Europe. Okay, Africa and Europe, we're not booting y'all out, but y'all gotta behave in my lands. Y'all can't keep acting like bullies over my Americans. We Americans are the kings and queens here. Aborigines all around the world, AIM, are the kings and queens in all your nations, in all your places. Africa, Anubia is your kings and queens. Asia, Tibetan is your kings and queens. Here in America, y'all know goodness well we are the noble families to your north and the noble families to your south. And hell, we cover practically the whole entire globe, for you spread my people throughout all 4 ends of the globe. And within sovereignty, within this global sovereignty, we do maintain power, control, and authority over the entire globe. We are the living family. We are the 13th family. We are the living true tribunal court. Putin and U.S. and Europe, when are y'all gonna get along? You know, y'all got us in the middle of your fight. This fight does not belong to my people. This fight does not belong to the communities. Why are you warring a commercial, no money war against all the people? And why are you making up races like white and black to fight against my people? White and black, if you don't behave in my lands, you're gonna become a servant of a servant. No, you're not going back to your lands, because you shouldn't have came over here and invaded. This is your home, whether you like it or not. Look, these days on this globe, they ain't gonna be dancing by a different beat. It already told you. We the spirit have taken our controls back over. Commercial, you are laundering money throughout my entire globe. Financial crimes, keep an eye on all of these elections throughout the whole entire globe. Putin tried to wreck your little slave system. You keep it, you punish for it.
Good morning. My name is Diana Klein. I came here today on behalf of our preborn neighbors who are being murdered in the womb at the rate of 200 a week in Tampa, under your watch and jurisdiction. It's time to end the bloodshed. It is my duty as a Christian to inform you of your God-ordained duty to preserve justice and to punish evil. Roe v. Wade is not a law. It is a fundamentally flawed court opinion that is to be completely ignored. Because you have been given the sacred trust of protecting innocent life, I'm exhorting you to bring everyone involved in the murder of a baby in the womb to justice. You have the power and the duty to interpose on behalf of our preborn children in Tampa. The first step is to learn how to interpose, which you can do by going online and studying the doctrine of the lesser magistrates at defytyrants.com. You can also go to freethestates.com to learn how others across the nation are proactively seeking legislation that will criminalize murder in the womb. God's word tells us that when the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, that the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. That's in Ecclesiastes 8:11. Tragically, we have cultivated a culture of death in Tampa and across this nation that needs to come to an end. We all need to humble ourselves and pray and seek God's face and turn from our wicked ways. Then God will hear from heaven and will forgive our sin and will heal our land. God's word also tells us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made in God's image, and that children are a gift from God, and that we are to open our mouth for the needy, and to defend the fatherless, and to rescue those who are being led to the slaughter. All of us must do our part in loving, nurturing, and protecting our fellow image bearers in the womb, because love begins in the womb. I welcome each of you and everyone within the sound of my voice to join me in front of the murder mills in Tampa to help rescue the preborn from a brutal death. Invite your pastors to join as well. There are lots of resources in Tampa for women who are with child. And you can help me get this information into the hands of those murder-minded mothers. Come see for yourself how helpless the babies are and how you must interpose on their behalf. You can find out more about the missionary work that I do for the preborn at lovethepreborn.com. That's lovethepreborn.com. Thank you.
Good morning, council members. My name is Richard Romeo, 1309 East North Bay, Tampa, Florida. I'm here before seeking property rights relief. I have tried to get property relief from Honorable Frank Redrick. I have sent several letters, and I have come here personally up to the office. I've tried. In addition, I also spoke to Lisa Aruski and also Honorable Charlie Miranda's staff without any success. I am seeking a formal relief from the action of the city inspectors, who I seriously believe has been in collusion with developers to steal properties in my neighborhood, especially my own, at 1309 East North Bay and 1306. Developers who comes into the neighborhood. I strongly believe this is a part of an ongoing gentrification scheme for taking city-owned properties that's owned by individuals. I believe a major negative impact has been a systematic removal of people from their homes in my neighborhood, and the delusion and breakup of the voter strength of black voters in the community and nearby neighbors. Finally, I feel that I'm a victim of the city inspector and contractor and developers who are engaging in a nefarious and illegal scheme to steal our properties at a very minimum cost to developers and contractors. I humbly thank this body for all the help I can get and will assist me in this crisis.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, council members, Todd Pressman, 334 East Lake Road, number 102 in Palm Harbor, Florida. I'm here for two separate issues today. The first has to do with tent permits and use requirements. The staff has been very busy over the last year, adding what we consider to be tremendous bureaucratic elements to that use. I'm here today directly representing one or two businesses and indirectly many others. This includes weddings, fireworks, Christmas trees, Gasparilla, activity at the stadium, sports authorities, school events, churches. It has a far-reaching effect throughout the community. The public has not been included with it, has not been a part of it, and it will be disastrous for a number of businesses. We'd like to ask your consideration for a referral to the building department, specifically, as we understand it, Mr. Dave Jennings, to come forward to council before these are enacted, so that we can be a part of the process and stop something that we believe will be very detrimental to the business community. The second issue is in the same vein, but has to do with a different subject regarding digital billboards. I'm representing one of the digital billboard companies. It has been a phenomenally successful program in the city. In fact, the city has used the digital billboards for 5 to 7 campaigns a year over the many years, about 50 campaigns that have been done for public service and community service. We're proud to say there's not been a single complaint lodged at the city with regard to the digital billboards, which trigger a tremendous reduction, multiple reductions in the paper posted billboards. We'd like to also ask for your help and ask you to consider referral to the city attorney's office to just start or initiate a discussion about some tweaks to the current ordinances to allow for a few more digital billboards, which would be many multiple paper boards coming down under the formula, and perhaps looking at a couple additional street segments. So in summary, I'm here to ask you for two separate pieces of help for your consideration, two separate referrals on these issues which are very important to the city, and one which we think is very disastrous for the business community. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Board Member, Council
Chairman,
Member.
on the digital billboard, if I recall, years back, I believe then that, and it took, believe me, a long time, a year or more to get this resolved. And I'm going back in history, so I'm going by memory. But I think it was a ratio of 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 or something like that.
Higher than that.
Something like that. And I think that the lead attorney at that time for the city was Gina Grimes. I think she might have wrote that ordinance. I'm not sure. Do you know anything, Mr.
It was
Attorney?
Mr. Fletcher. We work close with Mr. Fletcher.
I don't know who it was, but I know she was involved.
I myself and the Clear Channel attorneys work with Mr. Fletcher very closely.
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
With Chip Fletcher?
Yes, sir.
So if anybody knows, those two individuals knows. So I have never heard what you just said now on both of these issues. So it just came up right now. And so you're talking about looking at, have you talked to anybody in the administration?
We touched base with the city attorney's office on procedure, and what we're looking to do is just to initiate that discussion. The city attorney's office, not speaking for him, did not want to move forward unless they had some kind of referral from council. So again, we're seeking to just initiate that discussion, see what we can work out, and see if we can bring something back to
And
council.
please correct me if I mistakenly say something, because we're going back in history 10 years or something, more than that maybe.
Yes, sir.
There were certain areas of the city that could not be any changes made with digital billboard. Am I correct?
The grand majority of the city is
Right.
excluded, yes.
And that's what I want to, I'm trying to remember all of it, but there was a voluminous amount of discussion on this.
It's restriction after restriction. It's
Right, I
very, very
remember
tight.
that. And you stated that there was no complaints ever?
We have never received or heard a single complaint that the city has received over the program for 8 to 10 years. And as I indicated, the city itself has been extremely active with their campaigns.
That's number one. On the other issue, you spoke about tents.
Yes, sir.
And what size tents?
Well, our understanding is it initiates at a very small level, 10 by 10. So that would include weddings, parties, all the tents you see at Gasparilla, at the stadium, industries like the fireworks, Christmas trees. It would be extremely widespread.
I don't know about other councils, I've never heard of this either.
It was our understanding that the fire marshal, can't speak for him, but our understanding from communications I heard that even the fire marshal was unaware or unfamiliar with what was occurring and what the changes would mean. But I can't speak for him directly.
All right, then, I think we ought to bring this to some light somewhere and either finalize it or continue with it one way or the other. First, that we asked the gentleman, Mr. Pressman, I believe, how's this orderly done? You have to contact the legal authorities or the city?
In regard to the tent requirements and usage, you mean, sir? Or the billboards?
The billboards first.
What would typically be best is just to have initial discussion with the city attorney's office on what would be the best way to proceed to even have discussions. But again, they did not want to do that without at least a referral from council.
Because I also remember there was a big discussion with neighbors and the whole city was involved. A lot of city dwellers came and spoke, and it was a give and take on both sides. I remember that years ago.
And worked out great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a tremendous program.
I don't mind making that motion.
Thank
If
you.
somebody would second it, so at
I'll
least
second.
to have Mr. Pressman speak to the legal department regarding what the needs and necessities are, if there's any.
Yes, sir.
And to go to that route.
Thank you.
All right, I got a motion by Mr. Miranda, second by Mr. Vieira. Any further discussion on the motion?
Excuse me, that it would be the legal department to talk to Mr. Preston.
Yeah, then we,
I'm sorry, that's what I
Right.
thought it said, okay. Sorry, thank
All
you.
those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's right.
and the second one, I see tents everywhere. But what I see most in tents is individuals who want to upgrade their house and they get hit in the, little knob, don't do that again, where because of the ways the houses were built, especially in District 6 and in District 5 mainly, and not that there's others somewhere, but the majority of them, they put up a little aluminum attachment to the house so that the car doesn't get hot and everything else, and it saves the paint, and saves the cars lasting a little longer, and saving somebody paying 20 or 30 or 40,000 for a new car, or a used car for that matter. And then they have to take it down because they never got a permit, they didn't build in conformity. And I mean, we've had cases here in appeals just recently, 6, 7, 8 months ago. And I feel sorry for those people because they single one, yet there's 40 of them in the next 2 blocks. And I'm not for or against them, but we ought to have conformity one way or the other, and possibly have a meeting with the neighborhood associations to see if we can work out something in that area where we can, I know there's certain setbacks and requirements, and I'm not to changing everything all at once, but all the houses now are built with garages. The problem is those 2 and 3 bedroom houses that were used as starter houses are no longer starter houses. They had gotten permits and added to them, and the family has grown, but they have no place to put the car. And maybe we can have something done to the district to have a situation where they can build a garage. I would certainly like to have one, but I'm not speaking about myself. I'm speaking about everything has to go through the Variance Review Board. And to a lot of people, 40% of Americans can't handle a $400 emergency. 60% can't handle a $1,000 emergency. So we're speaking about those individuals right now. And my heart is with them, but I understand that there's a law that has to be abided by, and I understand that. So going back to the tents, it's the same thing. We have something in the works, what you just said it was, and a little 10 by 10 with somebody selling, I'm not going to say lemonade, but whatever the case may be. Now they're going to have a certain, they got to get a permit for that?
They're requiring a civil engineer, they're requiring architectural renderings, they're requiring a 3-month submittal period, and many other just incredibly burdensome regulations.
For a 10 by 10 tent?
Yes, sir. And again, this was promised to be shared and inputted with the public and has not been. So what we would like to request is that the council, with your consideration, refer this to the business department. I understand the contact person is Mr. Dave Jennings, to come forward in a couple weeks to present this, and the public can have input before it is implemented. There are industries that are concerned that are going to be out of business over this.
Mr. Chairman, in view of the information we received, I would like to have some clarity. So I asked Mr. Jennings to appear. What's the next council meeting?
March 7th.
27th?
The 7th.
The 7th?
I
The
second
7th?
it, but I want to say something.
And then I yield to Ms. Capeen.
Okay, I will second that. When Councilman Miranda said that the people can't, they don't get a permit for their carport or their little aluminum, they can't get a permit. They can't. They will not give them a permit for that because of the setbacks and the rest of it. So that needs to be looked at, because we have houses here that were built in the 50s and 60s, and that it's very hot here. The sun, everybody knows what the sun can do to your car. Besides that, the other thing is on the tents. Now, I remember very distinctly about the area along Himes Glen, Tampa Bay Boulevard. They are put upon all the time, every weekend with the stadium, every single weekend. And they put up signs, no parking in the streets, all over the place. And they also will not permit them to do any selling from their homes or anything else. They are put out every single weekend, and we add to that. This is a working class neighborhood, and these people need help. And they put up with it year after year after year. How long has the stadium been there? I don't know, 40 years?
50.
Over 50. And that whole neighborhood, every single time. And then when they came up with, what's the latest big thing that's coming to the stadium? That we had a clean sweep or something about not permitting them to do any parking or selling or anything else. And I think the national championship game. And you're very well aware of this. There's several of us that are from that area, and I see it. It's
I can't visit my mother without being involved with some kind of event over there, so.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to look at that, and we need to be more cognizant of the neighborhoods that we bombard every weekend because of our stadium. I mean, the stadium's beautiful, it's wonderful, but we have to consider the neighborhood. And that's my spiel for today. So I second your motion. No, I shouldn't have said so far today. Let me put it that way.
All right, you got a motion from Mr. Miranda, second by Ms. Capini. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, council members. And where's Mr. Latimer? Win big. Win big. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kim Dionisio. I am the owner of Swami Juice. It's a small juice bar, smoothie bar on the corner of Beta Bay and McDill. We also have a second location down in Armature Works. I've been a resident of Palmacia for 11 years. I'm here today to notify City Council that the businesses along Beta Bay have not been notified that the resurfacing project on the road is going forward this month, next week, and without notice of the final design, which apparently does not include any of the additional safety features designed and recommended by the city's own planners and engineers. My business and I have been vocal in the process, in the design process on Beta Bay, signing on to letters. I've spoken here before City Council. My customers say they don't feel safe coming into my store by foot, by bike, and at certain times of the day by car due to the hostile road environment out there. The city's engineers have designed a road that was up to 50% safer. And this would also improve functionality and flow on the road for both cars and pedestrians. This design process was years in the making. But now, without any notice to me, to other businesses along this road, there has been no publication of the final design. And I find out now that the resurfacing project on the road is moving forward without the added safety features. There was no public comment on the final design. There was no notifications to the small businesses on this road. As a business owner, I want a safe road to travel on. As a mom who crosses the street 3 to 4 times a week with my kids to get to preschool, I want a safe street to walk along, to drive along. So I am here today to ask City Council to delay the resurfacing project and revisit the safety design features designed by your own engineers. Thank you very much.
Is that something that we are able to do? To try and postpone? You know, it needs more public input.
You can certainly make a request of the administration, but that is, at this point, solely an administrative function.
It's an administrative function, but I'd like to make a motion that that the administration consider postponing till there's more public input as to that repaving of that street. Second.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Capine, second by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mentesnot, Tampa, Florida. It's a certain kind of hatred, for black people. And you hear it week after week. Mr. Pressman got a suit on, and the black man got a suit on. So it's not the way they dress, it's the color of their skin. They didn't ask Mr. Black Man one single question in reference to what he's here for. But Mr. Pressman Mr. White Man got a whole discussion. Black people come up here week after week and speak against the injustices that we encounter day in and day out, and it's not heard. And I say everything in here from this city council is garbage, from the invocation to the decor to the Pledge of Allegiance is garbage. You got a city councilman talking about, I can't even begin to imagine how somebody feels for being incarcerated for 18 years. Somebody in somebody else's country fighting for capitalism and imperialism, and he can't imagine how they feel. And it's young black Africans right here in this city for little minor drug offenses, gone for 40 and 50 years in supermax prisons and in other places and other forms of isolation and incarceration that's just inhumane and barbaric, but he don't know how it feels. I can't imagine that. It's racism, nothing more, nothing less. Nobody have the courage to stand up to racism. And when you do, they treat you bad. And they live right here amongst it. And they try to tell you about decor. And they try to tell you about decor But the mayor's calling African women bitches and calling for the lynching of an African man. And they talk about decor. And after all these years, we just hear someone standing up about what the mayor should do as far as what does, it's an administrative function and they should turn on the TV. The people right here don't have the courage to say the TVs right outside are off. The TVs right outside is off. And the man here talks about decor week after week, and here's a black buffoon telling someone, you'll kiss my butt, you'll kiss my butt, and you'll kiss my butt. How disrespectful. You have to lead by example. And they don't lead by example because y'all are a bunch of cowards. Nothing more, nothing less. Self-serving cowards. The black man can't get the time of day, but the white man can get a whole resolution and everything else that go with it. Cowards. You can kiss my butt. Garbage coward.
My name Benjamin Baisden, West Tampa Alliance. I stand before you bringing the gospel. Truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. Last time I was here, I was speaking about the West Tampa Alliance, and something came up saying that West Tampa Alliance is not legit. That is not true. The reason why I'm saying that, we are a 501c3 organization, and we sit on the CRA board. I am someone that sits on a committee of the CRA. Now, if we wasn't legit, how could this be true? I come here before you asking again about radio, something that this community needs, something that the city needs. This is community radio. I come here asking again about West Tampa Alliance Juneteenth, because we started something Juneteenth years ago, and since that time, others have come along and I would say trying to take something that we started. We're talking about the coalition. We're talking about Clayton Sutton going down there to Parks and Rec and changing our paperwork. This is not right. We know it's not right. Councilman, the things that you said the last time I was here, I don't approve of it, but I guess you can do that because you sat in that seat. For kissing your butt, sir, I'm not the one. I'm not the one. If you come down on Main Street within the 10 years that I've been doing what I'm doing, cleaning up and down Main Street, going to old people's houses, cleaning up their backyard, cutting the grass for free. Now, since we have a CRA, seems like we can't even get a pair of gloves, a trash bag to clean up the alleyways. Why is this? This is not right. We have a CRA, I don't believe that we would need it, because the greedy seems to get it, but the needy get left behind. That is not right. It seems like we shouldn't even have no CRA because it's the taxpayers' money. You govern it, but we can't get anything from it. Why is this? Why is this? It's not right. I constantly ask for this, and I can't get no feedback, especially for the radio station. This radio station is something that we need in this community. Why wouldn't you want a community radio station unless you're saying something or doing something that you have no business saying or doing? Because it'll come out, the truth will come out. Why? Why? I thank you for allowing me this time.
There's so much truth in what these brothers are saying, but the thing about it, just like the brother said here, there's no justice here for black folks. We could come here and talk week after week. Nobody seems to want to hear us. But we got to get something straightened out. And by the way of God, we're going to get it straightened out sooner or later because we got God on our side.
whether y'all want to hear us or not. The truth will prevail. And we got to understand, we don't come down here to be seen. We come down here for justification. And if you don't want to give us justification, don't let us come in here, and then we'll form our own government on the outside. There you go. Thank you, Jesus. And that's the way it's going to be. I have a church there located at 1112 East Scott Street. My name is Pastor Williams. I come down here week after week trying to stand up for justice for all people, not just the black people. But y'all don't seem to want to respect black men, women, or children. And that's sad. That's very sad. But I'm gonna send a pamphlet out and send it all over the world. And I guarantee you, y'all will hear us then. But I don't want to wait too late. I'm going to read some scripture to you from the book of Ecclesiastes. And these are the words of God. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, a time to heal. A time to break down, a time to build up. A time to weep, a time to laugh. A time to mourn, a time to dance. A time to cast away stone, a time to gather stone together. Time to embrace, time to refrain from embracing. Time to get, time to lose. Time to rend, a time to sow. All is a time for everything. But I got to let y'all know, y'all got to cut out all this foolishness. Y'all got to respect all people, not just the white folks or the people the same color y'all skins. It don't make no difference. You got to respect us. I got a church at 1112 East Scott Street. And you want to know what? They put a fence all. I can't even get to the back of my church to park or nothing like that. And I done told y'all about it time and time again. But yet, y'all don't want to hear what I got to say. And y'all ring this buzzer off for when black guys come up here. But white folks, y'all let them stay up here as long as they want to. What I got to do to keep y'all from ringing the buzz on me? I got a bunch of people I want to bring down here so they can set the record straight of what we're trying to do. Thing about it, y'all are embarrassing to people. And I'm not just talking about black people, all people. Y'all think y'all hold a position and hold a monopoly over black people, but y'all don't. Y'all got to understand, we're created by our Father, God, which y'all don't believe, but I believe. And that's the way we're going to live until the day we die. And y'all got to understand, treat the brothers and sisters right. And when you treat us right, then maybe y'all can get elected for mayor. We know who's going to be the next mayor. It's going to be Jan Castro. And she the one who put up them red lights. I done got about 5 of them.
All right, sir, you said
and they ain't never run no red light.
You said we don't give
you can't judge me because you're a sexual pervert over little girls. So you can't tell me to shut up.
Sir,
I got to understand.
sir,
I got to
sir,
tell you the truth.
Excuse,
the truth is the light.
Pastor Williams.
I can understand
Your
what
time
you
is
say.
up.
All right, now you got to remind me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna step down. But they got to do what's right for black
Your
folks.
time is up.
Thank you.
Nobody want to hear from you.
Respect us like we respect you all.
Well, start respecting yourself first. All right, do we have any requests for public reconsideration of legislative matters? All right, we go to committee reports. Public Safety Committee, Charlie Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public Safety Committee, I move items 3 through 6.
Second.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Miranda, second by Mr. Maniscalco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Park Recreation Cultural Committee, Mr. Maniscalco.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I move items 7 through 12.
Second.
All right, we got a motion from Mr. Maniscalco, second by Mr. Miranda. All in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public Works, Mr. Maniscalco.
Yep. I move items 13 through 24.
Second.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Maniscalco, second by Mr. Miranda. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Finance Committee, Ms. Vieira.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I move items, oh my God, where is this thing at? Oh, here it is, 25 to 27.
Second.
Okay. Got a motion from Mr. Vieira, second by Mr. Suarez. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Building Zone and Preservation, Mr. Vieira.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I move items 28 through 40.
Second.
motion from Mr. Vera, second by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Transportation Committee, Mr. Suarez.
Thank you, Chair. I move items 41 through 48.
Second.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Suarez, second by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Move to open items 49 through 52.
Second.
All right, we got a motion to open item 49 through 52 from Mr. Maniscalco, second by Mr. Suarez. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, we will go to our 9:30, item number 49.
Thank you, Council. Rebecca Kurt, Little Apartment. I'm here on item 49. Item 49 is an amendment to Chapter 16 regarding your list of dedicated parks. We had spoke about it previously. There's an addition of a requirement. The list of dedicated parks can only be amended by ordinance and only if done so by no fewer than a vote of 5 members of City Council. That's the only change. It is a public hearing, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Okay, we have any question for staff? All right, the applicant?
The city, I believe, is the applicant on this petition, and I'm not here to speak in opposition to this. Morris Massey with Hillward Henderson 101 East Kennedy Boulevard here in Tampa. I would request, though, that City Council motion that the City Attorney's Office and staff bring back a change, the first change pursuant to this procedure, to correct the address of the Barksdale Center. On your current dedicated parks list, the Barksdale Center is shown as being on North B Street. Over 15 years ago, that property was conveyed to the University of Tampa. A new Barksdale Center was built on Lincoln Avenue, and so we'd like to have that address changed. And the university is about ready to build a multi-million-dollar fine arts center on the site, so we'd like to get that cleared up if we could.
And Chair, after we clear this item, we can make a separate motion later on concerning that because it's opposite. I mean, it's separate from this particular item.
Okay.
But thank you, Mr. Massey.
So, Mr. Suarez, you take 49?
Yes, sir. I present an ordinance for second reading and adoption, an ordinance of the City of Tampa, Florida, making revisions to the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, Chapter 16, Parks and Recreation, amending Section 16-91, List of Dedicated Parks, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
I got a motion from Mr. Suarez, seconded by Mr. Miranda. All, please record the vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Viera absent at vote.
Okay, go to item number 50.
Good morning, Council. I'm Ron Vila. I'm staff with Historic Preservation. I'm here this morning on a tax ad valorem exemption for the address of 2111 West Walters Avenue in the Hyde Park Local Historic District. The structure was constructed in 1925. It is a frame vernacular craftsman-style home. This is showing the house prior to renovation for the interior and the exterior. Just quickly to go through some photos. This is prior to rehabilitation, as I stated, and an addition. The addition will take place behind the pop-up. Just to show you some brief floor plans. This is showing the addition, what was there prior to rehabilitation. And then on the first floor, they added a family room, a half bath, and a patio off the rear. On the second floor, the addition composed of a master suite. This is looking at the structure in Hyde Park. The addition focuses it back here. The primary structure was rehabilitated. Moving to the interior, shows the wood floors and the kitchen beyond. Through the renovation, they sanded the wood floors, brought them back to their original luster. Then you see here that there was a built-in and a room divider that's very characteristic of these style homes. That was recreated as part of the interior renovation. Bathrooms prior to rehabilitation consisted of 1970s motif, and then after rehabilitation, more of a period appropriate style as it moves forward with the tile and the wainscoting and the subway tile and the bats. This request is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards as presented.
Any questions, Mr. Staff? Anyone in the public wish to speak on item number 50?
Move to close.
All right. Second. We got a motion from Mr. Miranda, seconded by Ms. Capeen. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Corn. Item number 50.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I move a substitute ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance approving a historic preservation property tax exemption application relative to the restoration, renovation, or rehabilitation of certain property owned by Devin A. Belarge, located at 2111 West Watrous Avenue, Tampa, Florida, in the Hyde Park Historic District, based upon certain findings, providing for notice to the property appraiser of Hillsborough County, providing for severability, providing for repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing an effective date.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Corn, seconded by Mr. Suarez. Please record your vote. One did come through?
Motion carried unanimously with Vieira being absent at vote.
All right, item number 51.
Mr. Chair, I'm abstaining from voting on item 51 as I did in the first reading because my father is the applicant.
And Mr. Cohen is filing Form 8B with the clerk. Thank you.
Item number 51.
Good morning, council members. Morris Massey, Hillward Henderson, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard. Here on behalf of the applicant, ABC Corporation. This is proposed amendments to your comprehensive plan for property located immediately to the west of the CSX railroad tracks in an industrial area near the University of Tampa, going to UMU 60. I'm here if you have any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Anyone in the public wish to speak on item number 51?
Move to close.
Second.
Got a motion from Mr. Miranda, seconded by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Maniscalco, you read item 51.
Yes, sir. I have an ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance amending the Tampa Comprehensive Plan future land use map for the property generally located at 1102, 1112, and 1116 West Carmen Street, from general mixed use 24, GMU 24, to urban mixed use 60, UMU 60, providing for repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Second.
Got a motion from Mr. Maniscalco, seconded by Mr. Miranda. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously with Cohen abstaining and Vieira absent at vote.
All right, go to item 52. Item number 52. Anyone here for item number 52? All right, anyone in the public wish to speak on item number 52? All right, get a motion to close?
So move.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Maniscalco, seconded by Ms. Capini. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Capini, did you read item number 52?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. File number PA 1815. An ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance amending the Tampa Comprehensive Plan future land use map for the property generally located at 4228 Monet Court, from residential 20 R20 to transitional use 24 TU 24 to public semi-public P/SP, providing for repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for an effective date.
Second.
All right, got a motion from Ms. Capini, seconded by Mr. Vieira. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, if you're going to speak on item 53 through 55, please stand and be sworn.
Chair, yeah, we need to open them. Open items 53 through 55. Actually, what time is it, Chair? We could open all the rest.
No, we can't.
Okay, yet? Okay.
It's not 10:30 yet.
I'm sorry.
Second on the 53 to 55.
All right, I got a motion from Ms. Suarez, seconded by Mr. Cohen. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, item number 53.
Gotta swear 'em in.
Oh, have they been sworn in?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
solemnly swear or affirm
I do. Good morning, council. Items number 53 and 54 have certified site plans turned into the city clerk. This is before you for second reading, and staff is available for any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff? All right, petitioner?
Hello. I'm the petitioner for item 53 for location on.
State your name for the record.
I'm sorry. Full name is Jadrunas Rechkauskas. I go by Z.
Okay.
Here, answer any questions that anyone may have.
All right, any question for the petitioner? All right, anyone in the public wish to speak on item number 53?
Move to close.
Second.
All right, we got a motion from Mr. Miranda, seconded by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Miranda.
Thank you, Chairman. Item number 53, file number AB 219-03. Ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption. An ordinance approving a special use permit S2 for alcohol beverage sales, restaurant consumption on premise only, and making lawful the sale of beer and wine at or from a certain lot, plot, or tract of land located at 500 South Howard Avenue, Suite 8, Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in Section 2, providing all ordinance or part of ordinance in conflict are repealed, providing an effective date.
Second.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Miranda, seconded by Mr. Vieira. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, go to item number 54.
Good morning, Council. My name is Josh Burnett on behalf of Florida Ticket Firm, the applicant. Appreciate your approval of this matter. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
Any question for the petitioner? Anyone in the public wish to speak on item number 54?
Move to close.
Second.
We got a motion from Mr. Miranda, seconded by, Mr. Corn. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Mr. Vieira.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I move an ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance rezoning property in the general vicinity of 3602 West Beta Bay Boulevard in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in Section 1 from zoning district classification, RS50 residential, single family to PD, plan development, office, business, professional, providing an effective date, including the site plan being amended with the revisions.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Vieira, seconded by Mr. Suarez. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, item number 55. Anyone here for item number 55? Anyone in the public wish to speak on item number 55? All right, we got
Second. Hang on a second.
You here for item number 55?
Yeah.
Well, I'm here for any questions.
Again, anybody in the public wish to speak on item number 55?
Move to close.
Second.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Miranda, seconded by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Mr. Suarez.
Thank you, Chair. I present an ordinance for second reading and adoption, an ordinance vacating, closing, discontinuing, and abandoning the alleyway right-of-way lying south of West Sly Avenue, north of West Elm Street, east of North Boulevard, and west of North Ada Avenue, in first addition to West Riverside, a subdivision in the city of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Florida, the same being more fully described in Section 1 hereof, subject to certain covenants more particularly set forth herein, providing an effective date.
Second.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Suarez, seconded by Mr. Corn. Please record your vote.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, we got 4 minutes before 10:30, so we're gonna go to staff report, item number 63. It's just a resolution. Anyone from staff, item number 63?
Good morning, Chairman and City Council members. I'm Kimberly Crum, your Director of Human Resources. I'm here before you today on item 63, which is the moving the administration of the health plan for the current year. This covers administrative services costs for using United Healthcare's network. It also includes stop-loss insurance and federally mandated fees, as well as our pharmacy and medical claims expenses for the year. We appreciate your support of this item.
Any question for staff?
A quick question. So you said moving it. Are we moving it from one company to another, or what are we doing on that?
No, just approving it.
Just approving it, okay.
Yes.
Are there any changes to what we have done previously with United Healthcare concerning this, the spending accounts?
I'm sorry,
I said, is there any changes with United Healthcare Services for the administrative services that they're providing to us? Is there any difference from what we have done
no.
previously?
They are doing our administrative services of the claims administration. They are also providing flexible spending account services for us.
Right.
But there have been no major changes.
Okay. Well, what minor changes were there?
Well,
There
we did-
have been no changes? There have been some changes. What were they?
Forgive me, you are aware that there were some changes to plan design last
Right.
year, which you were very, very much involved in. So
Yeah.
those are the only changes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Ms. Crum. I appreciate it. No other questions, Chair. And I'll move the resolution.
Second. All right, got a motion from Mr. Suarez, seconded by Mr. Corn. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, Council.
Okay. Go to item number 64. Anyone from staff here for item number 64?
Good morning, Council.
Good morning, Council. My name is Rod Hatch, my wife Becky Hatch.
No, we talking about staff. Are you a member of city staff?
No.
We talking about city staff.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just followed my wife.
Sweetie, sit down, sorry.
And, you know, Chair, if you could direct, you know, this is not a public hearing. When we have a staff report, you might want to ask them, tell them that they don't have a role in speaking unless we ask them to speak.
Right.
My
Okay.
apologies.
No problem. No, we just want you to know.
I just listened to her.
Good idea.
I think they got the message. Yeah. All right, anyone from staff here for item number 64?
Rebecca Kurt, Legal Department. I did see the staff representative here, but I don't see him right now, so maybe we could go to the next item and try and get him
All
here.
right, we'll try item number 65. Anybody here from?
It looks like they're asking for a continuance on that, Mr. Chair. So if there's no objection from council, I'd move the continuance to June 6, 2019, in order to coincide with the fiscal year 2019 revenue and expenditure overview presentation.
I got a motion from Mr. Corn, second by Ms. Katina. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion carried. Now, we'll go back out 10:30. It's 10:30 now. If you're gonna speak.
Oh, Chair, if I could open those first, I think it is.
I thought we opened out, okay.
I apologize, Chair. Items 56 through 62.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we got a motion from Mr. Suarez, seconded by Mr. Corn. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, if you're going to speak on item number 56 through 62, please stand to be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go to item number 56.
Thank you, Council. Rebecca Kurt, Legal Department. I'm here on item 56. Item 56 is a continued review hearing that City Council had already opened a couple of weeks ago. The underlying decision was a design exception 2 for height. You have so far heard from, it was approved by the zoning administrator. So this is a third-party review by a neighbor challenging the original decision. I will hand out again the procedures that we're following in case you don't have a copy from last time, as well as sample motions.
Okay. And just for the record, we're going to give each side 5 minutes just to recap.
Okay, that's totally appropriate. You left off, just to refresh everyone's recollection, you had heard from the petitioner, and you had heard from the underlying applicant, the property owner, and you were in the middle of public comment. If you would like to start again with a 5-minute recap, starting with the petitioner seeking review,
Right.
and then 5 minutes from the original applicant, which is the property owner, and then we would go back into public comment. Thank you,
We
sir.
can do that. All right.
Good morning, council. My name is Kathleen Farzanigan. My husband and I own a home at 82 Columbia Drive within a 250-foot radius of 90 Columbia Drive. As I stated on February 7th, we wouldn't be here today if the developer adhered to the requirements of RM24. My neighbors and I left the zoning hearing on November 9th, 2017, with the understanding that the developer was going to follow the code requirements. We based our assumptions on several key facts. The staff report, which I submitted, states this is a Euclidean zoning request, therefore no waivers are permitted. The developer's representative, Mr. McLeany, stated at the November 9th zoning hearing, again, there are no waivers requested because this is not a PD. Any development would have to comply with RM24. We are going to be meeting all the development codes, and also we'll have to meet the height regulations as established in the code for RM24. A maximum of 9 development units could be established on this property if we can meet the development criteria, but that also includes meeting all the green space requirements as well as the setbacks and provide for all on-site parking. The petition to review process allows an aggrieved person to bring evidence to persuade you to overturn a decision made, in this case by Ms. Gloria Moreta. I want to say that to a person, each city staff member I interacted with during this process has been professional, knowledgeable, and courteous. However, I stand here today because my neighbors and I believe that the decision to allow a design exception was made in error. I'll finish at the rebuttal. Thank you.
No. You have 5 minutes. That's it. All you doing is recapping. 5 minutes.
Rebecca Kurt, Legal Department. This was her recap, and then at the end of the public comment and everything else, they do get additional rebuttal time.
Okay.
I just was trying to, in the interest of time, let the public know.
All right.
Thank you.
Next.
Julia Mandel with the law firm of Gray Robinson at 401 East Jackson Street, Tampa, Florida. I just want to clarify for the purposes of the record, I believe I did have time, about 12 minutes left for rebuttal. I don't anticipate taking all of that time, but I want to make sure that I have that time available, and I really don't know that I need to recap at this point other than taking my rebuttal time. So if I could just get that clarified.
Ms. Kurt, do you know how much time is left?
Rebecca Kurt, Legal Department. I do recall that she did have, there was a lot of discussion last time about her reserving her time. Honestly, I don't want to testify that it was 12 minutes, but that sounds accurate, and I do recall that she did have time that she specifically reserved.
Okay.
If that's the case, I don't need to have any additional time at this time, and I'll just take the remainder at rebuttal. Thank you.
All right. All right, we go to the public.
Before we go forward, we want to make sure Ms. Mandel, excuse me, and Ms. Kurt too, probably. Just want to make sure, let's get the number right. So is the number 12 minutes exactly, or should we just?
It was somewhere around 12 minutes. It might have been a little more.
Is there going to be any problem if we keep it at 12 minutes?
Keeping it at 12 minutes is totally appropriate.
If that's
Thank
okay,
you.
Chair, I think that we probably should go forward with that.
All right. Yes, sir.
And Mr. Chairman, just a reminder, this is a continued public hearing,
Right.
so that those who have previously spoken the last time have had their opportunity to speak. The public comment at this continuation would only be available to those people who did not take the opportunity at the prior public hearing portion to speak. So please limit your comments to only those people who have not yet spoken. Thank you.
Okay. You may come.
Mr. Chairman, I've been provided by a speaker waiver form by Mr. Mulford. I'm going to attempt to, some of these names are illegible. Carl LaCroix, thank you. It's Fred is the first name. Is there a Fred? What is your name, sir?
Farzanigan.
Fred Farzanigan, thank you. Ardeen Hammond, or close to it, thank you. Katie Marquis. Is there a hand? Okay, thank you. I can't see that. Carol Johns. Thank you. And Maura LaCroix. Okay, and the last name is crossed out. That's 6 additional names for a total of 9 minutes. Thank you.
State your name and.
Hi, Bert Mulford. My husband and I own a home at 41 Bering Street, directly across from the proposed development. At the November 2017 meeting, I spoke of our opposition to the rezoning. We were concerned by the council's decision to approve the zoning request, but we were reassured by the developer's a statement that he would not seek any waivers and would only comply with the RM24 code. Planning and Development also stated no waivers would be requested and all codes would be met. Being directly impacted, I firmly opposed this design exception and asked council to overturn it. The developer has asked for a height variance to 33 feet. However, at the 2017 hearing, the developer stated that he was fully aware the property was in a flood zone and that the structure would have to be elevated. Ms. Moreda's letter states that the encroachment into the required height at the base of the setback will not be injurious to the safety of our block. I firmly denounce that statement. Previously, I've reiterated that Bering Street is a major throughway to Columbia Drive public venues. Little League Baseball, the Roy Jenkins Pool, the Marina, the Garden Club, and the Sandra Friedman tennis courts. Given the adverse parking situation, I had witnessed numerous public safety incidents. The added density and dangerous ability alley configuration of the revised development will be detrimental to public safety. Walkers, cyclists, golf cart drivers must now dodge cars parked illegally on both sides of the street. The site plan shows rear garages with a width of 16 feet, which will not practically accommodate 2 medium-sized cars. It is highly probable that some of the residents will be forced to park on the street. There is no room for a dumpster, so the residents will have to put the recycling and garbage bins in a narrow alley, further worsening the congestion. The developer stated that all on-site parking would be provided. Last June, we had a tragic death on Davis Islands in a narrow alley. While there were mitigating circumstances, the potential danger exists given the narrow access and sizable foot and bike traffic. The proposed design will elevate the risk of injury. This development does not comply with required off-street parking for visitors, section 27-283-7. 2 visitor parking spaces would need to be added to the plan. This design exception might seem negligible to city staff, but it is not to those directly impacted. It strikes me as being a precedent-setting workaround. With a lot size of nearly 18,000 square feet, the developer can efficiently design a townhouse plan that meets the RM24 code requirements. Davis Islands is under extraordinary pressure for increased density beyond what the land parcels can sustain and is contrary to the composition of the charm and the character of the neighborhood. In my last few minutes, I'd like to comment on the process. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you to state my concerns. Government organizations, by the very nature of their work, must issue guidance and directives that run counter to what many citizens want. Here is what data tells us. If citizens believe that the process for decisions is fair and transparent, a level of trust is developed between the agency and the community impacted, and the majority of citizens will accept the judgment. There were several times in this case that did not meet that standard. The statements by Mr. Michelini that the development would adhere to RM 24 code and not request any waivers. And after that, not presenting a site plan at the November 2017 hearing, the compressed time with which the developer presented a plan with driveways in the front on November 2nd, 2018, and then altered the design to move the garages to the rear on November 6, 2018. The request for a design exception in height, again, it's really about setback, not height, with the letter approving the exception issued November 8, 2018, 2 days later. The process was not transparent. It did not respect neighbors who were on the record as being concerned about the development. It made abundantly clear to us that the request to increase the height to 33 feet was a misrepresentation of what the real goal was and a clever sleight of hand by the developer. On January 30th, 2019, 7 days prior to the hearing of February 7th, Ms. Julia Mandel sent a letter to Rebecca Kurt regarding 90 Columbia. Clearly, hiring an attorney is a decision for a developer to make. What concerns me, though, is that Ms. Mandel left the city's employment in February 2017 and was bound by the City of Tampa's ethics code to not do business with the city for 2 years, per Section 2581, post-employment restrictions, representation of others before the city. Perhaps the time in question prior to the 2-year timeline seems insignificant. However, such actions erode trust in the process, and it gives the clear impression that everyone is not playing by the rules. Accordingly, I respectfully request that council reverse this decision. And I've got a couple photos. Here is, I don't know, can you see this here? Okay. This is Columbia Drive, and in the meeting in 2017, I believe there was a misrepresentation that the majority of residences were multifamily. We actually live directly across the street in a single-family house right here. And these are all single-family residences along Columbia. The yellow dot is where the proposed development is. And then as far as the parking situation on Bering Street, this is a photograph of outside my front door. As you can see, parking is at a minimal. We had an RV parked across the street for 8 days. And then finally, this is a photograph of my car trying to get in a 16-foot wide garage. And as you can see, it has room for one car, but it's very unlikely that you will comfortably be able to fit 2 cars, or at least 2 medium-sized cars, in that garage. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Mandel has requested an opportunity to immediately address the ethics question that was raised. I know it's slightly out of order, but I do think it's appropriate because if she can't proceed on this case, then she's going to have to recuse herself. So I'd like to provide her the opportunity to address just the ethics issue that was raised.
Any objection from council? None. Okay. And this will take away some of your 12 minutes?
It'll take 1 minute for me to just make sure that that situation that has now been placed in the record is dealt with, and if there's any concern on council's part, then I'm happy to deal with that immediately. As city council knows, I did work for the city for quite some period of time, for 13 years. I did leave the city. I did not do any work before the city until my 2 years was up. My 2 years was up when I took this case and got involved. If there's an issue that should have been raised before this hearing, as I properly raised issues I felt were appropriate before this hearing. Therefore, I just wanted to put that on the record now. I'd like to put that to rest now. If there's an issue, I'd like city council to raise that issue with me now. Otherwise, I'd like to go back to the hearing. Thank you.
Just for, I obviously see no issue from my understanding. You're well within your ethical legal, et cetera, rights. And as a colleague, you obviously have a great reputation for being a public servant and a great attorney, so I see no issue. Thank you.
All right, next speaker.
Good morning, council members. I'm Christine Durr. The last name is spelled D like David, E-R-R. And I am going to try to put some photos down. I've been sworn. Let's see. Tell me if this works.
They're upside down.
They're upside down?
No, no.
Upside down is not what I meant, I'm sorry.
We're seeing the back of the photos.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay, so what I'm showing you is 78 Columbia, that's my house. 70 Columbia, 74 Columbia, and then we've got 82 Columbia, which is the Farzanigan's house. Kathy spoke a moment ago. Just to give you an idea of that row that Bert was just showing you of single-family homes, this is those of us in a row there. Okay. So I'm 78 Columbia, and I'm here to ask that the new construction within our community follow the code. Other than the fairly large assemblage, there's nothing unusual about this site, which exceeds 17,000 square feet and is substantially rectangular property. The city's codes provide for a number of buildable options, which would not require an exception or a variance. Specifically, the city zoning districts identified as RM16 and RM18 allow for the construction of 6 townhomes on the site. Additionally, per table 4.2 included within section 27-156 of the code, the townhomes could reach a height of 35 feet without any reduction of yard setbacks. If the 33 feet height is really the issue, the applicant could pursue the rezoning of the site to an RM16 or an RM18 and build the units in conformity with the code. The applicant also has the ability to build the townhomes within the RM24 zoning specifications, which allows for maximum height of 60 feet, subject to the requirement that for each foot of building height above 30 feet, the required yards shall be increased by 1 foot. Per section 2743, height is the vertical distance between the finished grade to the highest point of the structure. The design exception decision letter was inconsistent with the code when the structure height was measured from the structure front versus the highest point. The structure is approximately 42 feet in height and not 33 feet. Therefore, the yard setback should increase. Please follow our code. We ask you to overturn this decision and require that the applicant develop their site in conformity with the codes. It's really that simple. If they want townhomes with a 42-foot height build, we'd ask that they require the increased setbacks. Thanks for your consideration. Appreciate it. And I'm submitting some supporting documentation.
Next speaker. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Connie Giabate, Davis Island resident. I've been before this council before to talk about traffic issues on Davis Island. And this time I'm focusing strictly on Columbia. According to the statistics provided to me by the city, there have been a total of 17 crashes on Columbia. It was from 2014 to 2018, but 17 on street. In other words, the crashes occurred on Columbia. There were another 19 crashes on the other streets where Columbia was the cross street. So we have a total of 36 crashes, or about 9 per year in that area. It is heavy traffic. As you also know, and I presented to the council already, we are dealing with about 21,000 cars coming onto the island. A lot of that is Tampa General, but even from the Arbor south, it's over 10,000 cars per day coming on and slightly more leaving. Those leaving our island are 21 something, almost 22,000 cars. So a lot of the cars are Tampa General, and they use Columbia because the visitors parking and the employee parking empty out onto Columbia, and they have to come down Columbia. Tampa General reports 33,000 cars visiting their site per day on the Davis Island site. So you can see how we are already over inundated with traffic in this area. I will point to this area right here where 90 Columbia is located, and there were 7 crashes there alone. Again, there's a lot of traffic. In June of 2018, I presented to the council the issues that Davis Island residents voiced per our next door platform, and speeding vehicles make it dangerous for pedestrians, bicyclists, and cars. Speeding cars, 20 mile per hour ignored, and stop signs are run, putting children in danger of getting hit. High volume cars speeding over 20 miles per hour speed limit is dangerous for our children and other pedestrians. So adding even more vehicles, especially to this location, we're going to see those stats increased. So I'd like you to take that into consideration, and I've been at the forums where we hear we need to protect our neighborhoods, so I'm asking City Council, for those of you running for other offices, to please uphold that promise where you said you were going to protect our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. My name is Phyllis Fleming. I'm a native of Tampa and a longtime resident of Davis Island. I'm currently the chair of the Davis Island Stewardship Committee for the Davis Islands Community Plan, and I ask that you overturn this design exception for the following 3 reasons. The request fails to recognize the Davis Islands Community Plan as approved by the Tampa City Council on November 15, 2007. The community plan establishes criteria for compatible residential development and references urban villages as follows in the adopted 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan. Specifically, page 44 of the comp plan states, and I quote, "Some urban villages may see substantial growth and change, e.g. the Channel District, because that is what is called for in their secondary plans. Other urban villages will see only modest change because their secondary plans don't call for a lot of growth and change, e.g. Davis Islands and Hyde Park." As a proponent of well-planned, sustainable development, I agree that a standard Euclidean zoning is appropriate here. However, the design exception being requested usurps the development standards required by a Euclidean zoning district and exacerbates issues that you've already heard that are characteristic of an overdeveloped site. My final point is that, believe it or not, the Tampa Comprehensive Plan has an entire section devoted to the goals, objectives, and policies for neighborhoods and community plans. The following policies are pertinent to this specific situation and should be regarded as an additional basis on which to overturn this design exception request. NE Policy 1.3.9, relate new buildings to the context of the neighborhood and community. NE Policy 1.3.10, where a fine-grained development pattern exists, build within the existing street, block, and lot configuration of the neighborhood. I respectfully request that you overturn this design exception and respect our community plan. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Denise Cassidy, and I'm a longtime resident of Davis Islands. I will admit I'm very disappointed to be here again discussing, our community plan, and no one really wanting to work with the community plan that was approved in 2007. But in short, I think this is not about heights, it's about the setbacks. The developer clearly knew when he purchased that this site and Davis Island were flood zones. He has previously developed on the island. This was not a design discovery as represented by the architect. What was done is a precedent-setting code workaround. The proposed development not only does not comply with code-required setbacks, but it's also being allowed upper floor cantilever into setback areas and the top floor stairwell, which is really a vestibule for a top floor occupiable space, roof patio at 42 feet and not 33, imagining being the next door neighbor. Davis Islands is under unprecedented, and I can't stress that enough, pressure for increased density beyond what sites can support. And this is totally inconsistent with the fabric of the islands. So please be respectful of Davis Island and the community that it is today. Thank you.
All right, anyone else wish to speak at this time? Anyone else from the public wish to speak at this time? Okay.
Again, for the record, Julia Mandel with the law firm of Gray Robinson. As you are aware, the only issue really before you today is the design exception and the height issues. I understand that there's some other issues that have been raised, traffic, density, and those other issues, but that is not what's in front of you today. It's simply the one issue of whether or not the zoning administrator properly approved the design exception. This was rezoned to a Euclidean district. That Euclidean district allows multifamily, including single-family attached, townhouses, condos. It also allows up to 60 feet if you wedding cake it in. This project, which came before the staff after receiving the RM 24 zoning classification, which, by the way, just, I know you know this, want to make sure the folks in the audience know this, does not require a site plan for approval, came before to allow a multitude of uses that I've described. When they came in to develop, they chose to develop single-family attached at one level, 33 feet across the entire level, plus the items that are allowed on top of that height determination, and the architect is going to describe that a little further. So it is uniform across the development, so you don't have that wedding cake. It can't go up, it's not going to go up to 60 feet. It'll stay at the 33 feet across the bow, and the design exception was requested as a result of the FEMA map regulations. I provided counsel, which probably was a little confounding, a copy of an order and some transcripts from a previous case, which was strikingly similar to this case, on Davis Island, a height increase for a single-family residential. The original request was from 35 feet to 38.5 feet. That was reduced during the process. That case, which was objected to by some folks on Davis Island, because it was a case on Davis Island, ended up in the courts. And I thought it was really interesting, the court order, because I think one of the issues that you've heard today, and I understand that that can be frustrating, but it is accurate, what is the difference between a design exception and a variance? And the court, and this is on page 1 to 2, and you want to follow along, but I'm going to read it out. The underlying request was not one for a variance. Again, this was a design exception for the exact same purpose, for increase in height due to FEMA maps. Rather, the requested height increase was requested under regulations for a design exception. To compare the two, a variance request approval for something not currently allowed under the code, whereas a design exception may deviate from the strict application of the code, but such deviation is contemplated by the code. So while I understand frustration by the neighbors of saying, well, they asked for this and they didn't want waivers, but now they're seeking a waiver, that is the purpose behind the design exception, to allow for this type of flexibility and to allow for design occurrences in the field when that happens. I also, for the purposes of the record, went ahead and put in the closed caption from that proceeding because I thought that was really interesting as well, and I thought it informed this hearing. At that particular hearing, the architect who was representing the homeowner at the time, because it was a single-family home, testified to council that Tampa is unique in the way they measure height. They measure it from natural grade, not based upon FEMA flood elevations. And he had indicated in the transcript that he had worked across the state, and this was incredibly unusual. And I think that you probably are seeing a lot more design exceptions as the FEMA flood maps change all over the city as a result of the way we measure height in the city. That may be something for you to consider moving forward, changing that height regulation and how that's dealt with, or changing the standards for your design exception. But what sits in front of you today is a request for a design exception that was approved by your zoning administrator under the code in a manner consistent with how other design exceptions of similar nature have been approved. And that was approved, that is in front of you for the petition for review. And there was really, other than objections to the density, the types of use, what's happening on Davis Island, there really isn't any other substantial confident evidence in this record as it relates to those issues on the FEMA maps. One other thing I just want to raise, and I'm going to ask the architect to get up, is I did hear some testimony about the Davis Island community plan. There were a tremendous number of community plans that were done in 2006, 2007, some even before then. Those were never implemented as regulations. They are not placed within the comprehensive plan, nor are they placed within the zoning code. As a result of that, there is no opportunity for the city to require developers to comply with that. And with that, I'll cede the rest of my time.
Good morning. I'm Michael Colazzo with Planmark Design Studio. Last time I was here, I tried to explain a little bit about the height exception, which is right here. We have a red line here. Our height is measured at 32 feet 9 inches, and it's to the highest point of the roof. The exclusions per section 27-158, you exclude parapets under 5 feet and stair enclosures. So we are within the rules of as far as the height measurements go. And as I explained before, this is a structure we're trying to give accessibility. A lot of times you see these projects that have stairs. Really, people on wheelchairs or bed backs can't go up the stairs every day. We're going to be able to have a small little threshold at the garage. Someone can wheelchair right in, get into an elevator, and on top of that, it's a 2-story townhome. So this, I do a lot of these projects all around the state, and there are different measurements. Sometimes they measure on a pitched roof to the fascia. City of Tampa goes to the peak. Sometimes they measure to the base flood elevation, sometimes the finished floor. And in this case, at the worst case, we're going to the finished floor to the highest point that's measurable per the statutes here. Everything here we have meets code. We have a 7-foot setback here, which is equivalent to what you would get in any single family zoning. So in R35 or whatever, they all have 7 feet. And what I think would be comforting for the community is the fact that this also allows for a condominium. Condominiums is a multifamily, and that would reduce it to 5 feet. So we're affording an additional 2 feet. This is pretty standard. We worked within it. We are allowed to have small projections per the code as well. So we have small little frame pad outs that you might hear, but these are all within the requirements that we follow in the Muni Code. The other thing, as far as I heard some arguments about some of the garbage and where all that's going to go. We have a large garage, actually. I don't know if you can see it on here. It's kind of hard to see, but I put in here that the typical garage size is a 19-inch by 20-foot depth, and we are well over that. We're over 23 feet inside to inside, and we have a 22 feet 4 inches. So we have, in this case here, we have 40 inches on the side additional. You can put your cans on the side here. There's a location here, back, and we have even a little spot here when the garbage man leaves it, so you don't have garbage cans just being left everywhere. So we're not going to need a trash corral. Another thing is a lot of people use their garages for storage, so they can't use the parking. And so we have storage here in a flex area here. We have storage here for whether they're going to put things that are more that need to be locked in safes. And we have additional storage on our 3rd floor, which is a walk-in, for people who want to store their holiday stuff. So no one's going to be needing to cram their garage so they can't park their cars in there. So that is one thing that we're very sensitive to. And as far as the total height here, we are even with our stair enclosure here, we're still lower than a typical residential house down the street. So this is not something that's just gonna be jumping up like maybe we might have with a neighbor that is a condo project. It is much higher and the setback is closer. I did see the photos where it showed the setback distance of that 5 feet. And again, you know, just to add a little comfort, this is a 7-foot setback that we have here. Our density is, there's 6 units, we're allowed 9, so we're only using 2/3 of it. So this is not we're not cramming every bit of inch in here to put every unit. We're putting a good sized product here that we think that people in the neighborhood could use, especially for the accessibility.
Ms. Capini?
Yes, the print here is so small that
Sure.
you put that back up. I
Sure.
want to know, tell me the height, I cannot read it, the height of the roof. It's a flat roof.
Sure. So what I have here, I have a height of a roof, but I also have a deck, and I measured to the top of the deck.
And that's what, because I can't even see with my
Okay,
reading
yeah,
glasses.
okay, yeah. It's 32 feet 9 inches right now to the top of the deck.
32 feet 9 inches to the top of the deck.
Yes.
And the parapet is how high?
It's, right now, it is shown at about 3 foot, it's gonna vary, but it's about 3 foot 5 inches.
Okay.
It's under 5 feet.
Okay. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Mr. Suarez?
Sir, you heard some discussion from Ms. Mandel concerning the FEMA map?
Yes.
Okay, this was first approved in November of 2017. Did the map change from the time that it happened, that we did this
No,
first issue?
and that was a
So,
different group.
hang on, let me finish
Okay,
my
sorry.
question. So, did the map change from the time that it was originally approved? And I assume that you had done a design prior to November of 2017, is that correct or not?
No.
Okay, so when did you do your design?
Okay, it was June last year.
June of last year. Did the map change from June of last year until now?
No, it did not.
Okay, thank you.
Just one question, just because Ms. Capine, it is difficult to see the numbers. Could you
Okay.
just put that?
Yes, sure.
How high are the ceiling heights on the 2 floors?
So the 2 floors, and I did look at if I had to collapse it to the minimum. So I got 9 foot 4 inches right now, and 8 foot 8 at the ground floor. With the smallest floor system I can get, we had to double the engineering to get the spans. So we didn't want to give something that was substandard to the neighborhood and just cram small low ceilings in there. But these are not. Even if I pushed everything down, I would still be short. Okay.
I'm sorry, I have a follow-up question, Chair, if I could. And so the FEMA map had nothing to do with your design originally in terms of height?
Oh no, we try to get everything. We try to get everything to fit within the design flood elevation and what we had. One of the things.
I guess
Yes.
let me ask the question more
Sure,
directly. Did FEMA, the FEMA map, have anything to do with your design going too high up, or was it because
Part of it, yes.
It did?
Yes, it did.
But
Yes.
you knew about the FEMA map prior to the design that you had?
Yeah, the challenge was to get an accessibility space, somewhere where someone can go right from the garage, but because it is not habitable, because it's in the flood zone, we might be drywalling it with materials and everything there, but that is not an area someone can live in. We want someone to have access to an elevator. Right there, that made it very, very difficult.
Did you do it because you knew that it would create a sub-basement issue and that it would cost more for the flood insurance? Is that what it is?
No.
Okay.
It really was for the community and is to add the accessibility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, any other questions from council? Okay.
Thank you. Just in conclusion, I would request that City Council uphold the design exception. And again, as I stated, I understand some of the frustration. This was done in line with the code. It was done in line with FEMA regulations, and it was done in line in order to assure the best design for the area, because certainly there were some other options that this developer chose not to take. Thank you.
Chair, could I just ask her one question? You just said that it was done in conjunction with FEMA regulations. Obviously, it wasn't, because it sounds to me like the design did not include what was being done with FEMA. So, I mean, I think I'm a little bit confused in terms of your discussion about FEMA. Obviously, there are some issues that have to deal with what you consider a 50 or 100-year flood elevation. When you have an engineer going there, the flood elevation certificate is necessary in order for you to provide the insurance for any building that comes in there. So you already know what the flood elevation is supposed to be when you're doing the design itself, would be my guess. And if that wasn't done, then there may be an issue there. And I don't know if that's the answer to it or not.
I think, and as I said, and as was dealt with in another case that I brought forward, is there is I don't want to say a conflict, it's not a conflict, but there is a challenge between the way the city of Tampa measures height versus the way height is measured for floodplain elevation. And that's why many jurisdictions, as testified to previously, put it that way. So when you go to design and you make a decision as, in this case, it is fair to say there were some flexible options, because it could have been higher in the center and lower closer to the ground, and that would have potentially also had more units. In making a decision to design this, they designed it in such a way that they could have the 6 units and meet floodplain elevation and keep the entire structure at that 33 feet. And that is the whole premise behind having that design exception available, and a specific element of that is related to floodplain elevation.
Yeah, and you know, it just sounds to me, and you know, just based on my experience in the insurance industry, maybe a little bit of poor planning on the part of the petitioner. That's just my guess.
I probably should note, just for the purposes of the record, that this is not the developer who did the rezoning. So that is
that you know, we have a unique. You mentioned we do have a unique situation here in Tampa. So maybe somebody that knows Tampa's code better probably should have been designing this, is my guess.
I would only
that's
caveat
my opinion.
Well, my only caveat to that is this does seem to be a trend, especially on Davis Island, where these design exceptions have been requested more often than they probably have been, which is probably what's creating some of the frustration in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Ms. Capeen.
Yes, no, I'm going to wait till she speaks, because I've got something to say.
Kathleen Verzanigan again. I wanted to just mention a couple of things in my rebuttal. Ms. Mandel presented a case that happened on Davis Island in a single-family house. We feel that's very different, because that house met all the green space requirements. This construction does not meet green space requirements. The other big issue for us is what they're calling a stairwell, but what we truly believe is a rooftop terrace. You notice the trellis columns and so forth. It goes up to 42 feet. And we have done some research as a neighborhood, and while this isn't the exact design, this kind of feels like what those rooftop terraces will look like. And once the design exception is granted, there really isn't any recourse for the neighborhood if the developer does in fact have that square footage up there. And we've seen on various websites kitchens and bars and so forth. So that is of deep concern to us. I know you've heard a lot about the public safety issue. I happen to have a home office, and I watched the summer camp kids walk back and forth between the tennis courts and the pool and the playground, and it really truly is dangerous. And it's exacerbated by the parking, and Councilmember Miranda had asked at the last hearing whether or not all parking code would be met, and he was assured that they would. What we're suggesting is that number of off-street parking spaces, section 27283-7, visitor parking for single-family attached, semi-detached, multifamily townhouse style, and multifamily requires 0.25 spaces for each unit. None are provided. The other issue I just want to close with is that Ms. Murata, when she had to meet the 7 criteria in order to grant the exception, one of them was that the request clearly demonstrates that it's warranted due to the unique circumstances of the property. There's no protected or grand trees. There's no existing buildings or structures, and there's no elevations or other physical conditions that would require this. So that criteria was clearly not met. In closing, I just would like to respectfully ask that you overturn this design exception. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Capeen.
Okay, well, I was reading the transcript from before, and my statement holds. I'm gonna wait till we close, but I'm gonna move that we uphold the, I'm gonna agree with the,
Well, let's close the public hearing first. Right, yes, yeah.
okay.
Do I sit down?
And, yeah. I feel that the exception that Ms. Murata was correct. We do have an issue with our floodplain, FEMA's floodplain. For instance, my daughter's 3 inches because her house is on, in Beach Park, in the lowest point in Beach Park. And because it's on piers, it is 3 inches above the flood zone. It does not have to require any insurance. She carries it, but nonetheless. But her neighbor does not have to. And so you have all these different variations all along, all over. And maybe we need to adjust that because it is gonna be an issue. And I don't see this, I see that Ms. Murata followed what needed to be done and the variance review board. So, zoning administrator, I'm sorry, the zoning administrator, not the variance, there's no variance. Okay.
Ms. Miranda.
I just want some clarity. My name was brought up, and I did ask that question some time back, where it meets all the parking requirements, and they said yes, and I'd like to know if it's right, if it's wrong. I've heard 2 sides now. Anybody from the city and zoning administration or whatever?
Gloria Moretta, Land Development. I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand your question.
During the hearing some time back, I asked that question regarding does this development meet all the parking requirements? And the answer, I believe, was yes. And now I hear contradiction to that statement from a third party, saying that, or implying that it does not meet the parking requirements. I'd just like some clarity.
Well, the subject of the request was strictly the height, from 30 to 33 feet. They are subject to compliance with all city codes, green space, parking, everything once they get into permitting. The site plan that they submitted did not show the visitors parking, but I did not waive any of that requirement. So the only subject of my review was strictly the height exception.
Thank you.
Mr. Cohen?
I want to say at the outset that I just want to be on the record that I have no issues at all with Ms. Mandel's ability to represent in this case as that issue was brought up. And I also want to say that I take at face value the statements that were made in the 2017 hearing about not asking for any waivers. I don't, since it was revealed that it's a new developer that's making the request now, clearly the people that were seeking this at the time, since there was no site plan, had no way of knowing what was going to be requested. But I remember the original hearing very, very well. And it wasn't just one night. We actually had to continue it and come back to settle some things. Yeah. And the issue of there not being any waivers or anything done with this application was a big one in the hearing. The neighbors were very against it, and the reason that I remember that council ultimately passed it was because it was Euclidean, and that there was an assurance made that all of the codes would have to be complied with in order for something to be built. And if I remember correctly, the neighborhood was not particularly happy about our decision, but at least it was clear. This strikes me as one of those cases where it's trying to get 2 bites of an apple, and I have difficulty with that. I understand the point that alternative design exceptions are available as a remedy in these types of situations, but that's also the reason that they can be appealed here, is because ultimately it's up to us whether or not to go along with it or not. And I just think, given the tenor of the original hearing and how important it was that all of that there not be any waivers, that was really the crux of the whole issue. I think it's important to stand by that.
Mr. Suarez.
You know, Mr. Cohen, I do remember that, and you're absolutely right. When we talk about Euclidean zonings, it does make a difference in a lot of our minds, because typically, because we don't have a project in front of us, we don't have a design, we don't have a rendering from an architect a lot of times. So when we approve these things, we expect that they're going to be kept to whatever the code says at that moment. And I think that there was a lot of discussion, and I had brought up some questions about the FEMA map. FEMA maps are there, and they typically don't get changed very often, not usually within a 5 or 10 year period based on what the community standard is, and they'll change it. And it does sometimes fluctuate between, within neighborhoods, between two different homes. And it's not because of the home and the way it's built. Typically, it's based on what the projections are for a 50 or 100 year floodplain type of event. So I think that whoever the previous developer was that went ahead and got the zoning approved, then was, obviously the property is sold to another developer, that developer should be held to the same standard for the zoning, or come back for a new zoning for their new project. That's the way I've always looked at it. I don't think that that's something that is too harsh of a request of people that have bought into a particular place and they have a design that might have a little bit of a difference. But the little bit of a difference means a big point, because we came into it with clean hands, meaning the council made a decision based on certain criteria. And I don't think that we should allow for that criteria to be swept away for one piece of it. I think that, unfortunately, Ms. Moretta does not have a clear design exception criteria that includes some of the things that might be needed. That is for a future time, and maybe even a future council to look into to find out about those design exceptions. But in my case, I don't think that we should allow for a design exception in this case.
Ms. Capeen.
Yes, again, I'd like to ask you a question. We're here to do what?
Rebecca
Please
Cur-
explain to this council.
Thank you. Rebecca Kurt, Legal Department. You are here on a review petition for a design exception 2. It is a de novo hearing, so you have additional information than was provided from the hearing officer. So you are to base it from everything that was created at the hearing today and at your last hearing. That's the evidence. What you have to review it against is the same criteria that the zoning administrator had to apply, which are contained in your staff report, and I believe have additionally been handed out to you again. So a motion, in addition, under your code, the petitioner for review has the burden to prove their case. So therefore, the petitioner has the burden to prove, in this case, that it does not meet at least one of those criteria for you to overturn the zoning administrator's decision. And I certainly have heard everything that City Council said, and there was a lot of very compelling testimony, but you have to base it on the criteria that you have before you. So when you make your motion at the end of the day, whichever way you go, for it to be upheld in the event that we go to court, I ask that you identify either which criteria the substantive competent evidence has shown is not met, or find that all the criteria have been met. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
any
you,
other
Ms.
discussion
Kurt, thank you.
from council? All right, we can get a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion from Mr. Cohen, seconded by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, pleasure of council.
I'd like to make a motion to uphold the zoning administrator's permit approval. I move to affirm the zoning administrator's approval of design exception application DE 2-1856 because petitioner has failed to demonstrate that the petition was not met, that the petition does not meet the criteria found in City Code Section 2760E5. That's it.
All right, we got a motion from Ms. Capeen. Do we have a second?
Wow.
All right, Ms. Suarez.
All right, Chair, I'll take a stab at it. I will make a motion to deny the zoning administrator's decision. I move to overturn the zoning administrator's approval of the design exception application DE 2-18-56 because the petitioner has demonstrated that the petition does not meet at least one of the criteria found in the City of Tampa Code, Section 27-60E5 sub G, which deals with the demonstration that the exception is warranted due to the unique circumstances of sub 3 existing property elevations or grades.
I'll second, but I want to add, if it's all right, sir.
Yeah.
The section 27-60E5A as well. I think that there's been a showing of interference with the rights of others as provided in this chapter, and that it would be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare.
Well, if I could, I want to rephrase on my motion. It is 27-60E5, and under would be sub G sub 3 on there. So just make sure you get that right. So we've got it as to where it's found in the code.
And Mr. Cohen, you also amended an additional, was that in the motion to add that additional amendment to that to include?
Yes.
5A?
And I accept that.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Suarez, was it seconded by Mr. Cohen? Was it seconded by you, sir?
Yes.
Okay, further discussion on the motion.
Here, obviously I'm gonna vote no, but I'm gonna tell you, none of us are gonna be here when this comes back. That's just to let you all know.
Well, some of them might.
Yeah.
You might want to talk.
Yeah.
There's at least 3 of them that might disagree with you.
That's not a majority, so we got it. Okay, got it. That's it. I'm voting no, but that's okay when I'm ready.
All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Motion carried with Kapini voting no.
Okay, we go to item number 57.
Good morning, Council. Kristen Mora, Legal Department. You have just received a handout that has a proposed hearing procedure for this. This is somewhat unusual. You don't see very many of these 27-3-18 hearings, so I have prepared this in light of the parties that we know are going to be here today to try and help and move this along. It's up to Council, but I would ask if you would consider following this procedure for everyone's benefit. The second and third page of the handout have the relevant sections of 27-3-18, the criteria under which council may find a violation under 27-3-18, as well as the criteria under which council may impose a penalty. This is the first time that this particular owner and operator have been before you, so this would be a maximum of a 30-day suspension. It is a two-part. Once the public hearing portion is completed, this is a two-part. The first one is a finding whether or not there is a violation. If a violation is found, at that point you would move to the second part, which would be the imposition of the penalty. We have here today Ms. Catherine Coyle, who is going to walk through these code sections a little bit with you, as well as the factual basis for why we are here today. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Yes, I have a statement. I want to disclose that I did meet with the petitioner yesterday, of course not discussing any of this about their projects coming up, but I do want to disclose that.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
The petitioner yesterday called, and I answered their call. I was here at the office, and I met with them, but this subject matter regarding any alcohol was not discussed with me.
Okay, thank you, Councilman.
Same with me, and I was not even aware this was coming up today.
Yeah. And I also met with them 2 days ago. I did found out that, that this was coming up. On that day, the attorney for the group disclosed that this had, that the meeting that we had nothing to do with this particular item. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that none of that was discussed at that time during that meeting.
Nobody called me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, council.
Well, that.
Yeah, you're, the rest of us are.
That almost concludes number 2 on the hearing procedure. With your indulgence, if Councilman Vieira and Maniscalco come back, I would like them to be able to be asked that question so that that is clear on the record as well, to cure any issues that might happen. I thank you very much. I believe, is there anything that needs to be received and filed prior to us going forward on this case, Madam Clerk? No? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I may point out, just as a point of procedure, I think that some people have come and left the room, and we might need another swearing in for this.
All right, if you plan on speaking and have not been sworn in, please stand to be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Good morning, Council. Catherine Coyle, Planning and Urban Design Manager and Zoning Administrator for the city. Ms. Mora gave you the couple-page outline of the procedures today and the steps to follow. On the second and third page of the document are the actual code criteria under section 27-318, which deals with expiration, suspension, and revocation of alcohol permits. Specifically, paragraph C deals with revocation and suspension. Once council or once a permit is actually issued, there are several items here that are listed under C1 A through N that could be considered violations of code, convictions for noise, violations of other parts of the code, compliance with health and sanitation standards. Any of those particular items, if there is enough evidence, if there's good documentation of those particular violations, then we would put the person on, the entity on notice, and then potentially bring that forward to you for suspension hearing, which is what we're here today to discuss. By way of background on this particular one, I would focus you on letter D, the operation of the establishment in a manner that repeatedly or an ongoing basis has negative secondary effects on surrounding property, including but not limited to violations of city code, which is in general, including the permit itself, ordinance or state law related to noise, parking, or trash and debris, after having received reasonable notice to terminate or correct any condition that is in violation of such code. And also, letter N, violated any section of chapter 14 or 27, any condition, limitation, or restriction imposed by city council or the zoning administrator at time of the approval, or any section of the city code relating to alcoholic beverages. Specifically, chapter 27 is where the special use conditions are for sales of alcoholic beverage permits. Just by way of background, April 2016 is when this particular entity came in for a permit to renovate the structure and the outside patio. This original approval was granted in 2011 by City Council. It was a different entity before. They left. This one came in. They got their permits April 2016. There was a request for sign-off. The sign-off in particular is key for council to understand. It's not something that you actually deal with typically. It's an alcoholic beverage sign-off on a state form. So what that form does, they come into city staff, and this is any alcohol location that's got an active permit. They come in with a state form filled out, and they have to provide all the information to the state itself, type of alcohol sales they're going to have at the location, the type of license they want from the state, all their background information. They have to include a sketch or a diagram of the sales area to show the state, because the state does inspect it
prior to and/or after the license is issued. And then there's a zoning section on every state form. And what the city is doing in this particular case is not authorizing them to do anything in particular that's on the site plan or otherwise. What we are telling the state in that form is that the city has granted a permit to sell within this boundary at an alcohol level that they're asking for that's equivalent to the license type, and with any special conditions that are related to sales in particular, such as the boundary itself, beer, wine, liquor, consumption on premises, or package sales. So that's all the state form is actually doing, is the city's telling the state, yes, we've granted a permit for this location, this type of alcohol. August 10th, there was a site visit conducted by staff. They did go out to, and they measured and then discussed it with the people that they met with on site. They created a little measurement document, and they did come back to me. I went out on a site visit August 15th, and that is actually me that signed off on the form. Mr. McLeany, I think he's here actually, he represented at the time. I met him on site. The site was under construction still. There were still tarps on it, you know, plastic on things and construction people around. We went around with a measuring tape and we measured the outside perimeter. They created this fence-like material that actually barricaded in and boxed in this exact boundary that I showed you before to match this boundary. The one thing they did have to do that was slightly different, because it's metal, as opposed to coming in a curve, they went like this at the bottom of the arc, so they're angled, so they wouldn't pick up any additional space. But that's really the basic parameters of that, just to show that they still were confined, and we went around with a measuring tape and measured it. I signed off. You've got your boundary. Subsequent to that, they opened, and there were various complaints. Everything we do for alcohol enforcement, just like regular code enforcement, it's complaint-based. There were complaints that came in. Staff recognized those complaints. They went ahead and reviewed it with me at the time. We looked at the site plan, looking at what was actually going on out there. There was a letter issued in June 2017, June 16th, by Ms. Dock, and she put them on notice that it appeared they were in violation, and specifically for two items. Foam paneling had to cover the entire fencing, and outside speakers. They weren't allowed unless they were actually self-contained speakers that you could turn up and down at the speaker itself within cabanas. The premise behind that is that they're self-contained, individualized controls. If you look at the ordinance and the plan, this is actually the plan that City Council approved. Sorry, I didn't detach that. That's that boundary again. So we took it straight from the plan. The conditions, as you know, you deal with alcohol permits all the time. This was actually approved under a previous version of the code, but the premise is essentially the same. They came forward with an S2 before you to get approval. They are in the downtown area, and noise was of a concern. They actually identified a noise mitigation plan, and they came up with conditions that they accepted and worked out with council for approval. Specifically, I'm gonna get a little bit closer. We might not be able to read it. The noise, in order to mitigate noise from both the interior and exterior, the following provisions will be provided. Inside, starting at the entryway, an 8-foot high wall will be constructed 8 feet from the entryway. This will act as a buffer in the building itself, so that when the door was open, noise couldn't escape. That wall is there. It has always been from the original occupant back in 2012. Outside, specifically, is called out. Upon construction of the outside terrace, the surrounding perimeter will be lined with decorative foam panels to trap excess reverberations. There will also be self-contained individual controls within the cabana so that the music levels can be sustained at an appropriate level without causing a nuisance to surrounding areas. So as far as the noise, and we deal with noise all the time, and council obviously talks about outdoor music, outdoor sound, and they deal with how that's actually going to happen. Their attenuation plan included that that perimeter fencing of the site itself, the actual perimeter, there are columns, and then there are wrought iron type fencing in between the columns. They were going to line the wrought iron portion with these foam panels to stop reverberation going through. They were also going to have, whatever speakers they did have, they were going to be self-controlled. So you actually, if you're next to a speaker, you could turn it up and down. It's not a house-controlled system. What we found when we issued the June letter was that it appeared that there were speakers outside that were not controlled, not self-controlled, and the paneling was not covering the entire fence areas. There were either gaps or missing parts, and we actually had pictures of that as well that were included in the letter in June, where you can see this is standing out on the street, you could see that there were gaps. So we were advising them to fill in those gaps to be compliant. And there were some cases where there were some foam, but there were gaps in between and gaps at the top. So they needed to completely fill those in.
Ms. Cole, could
Yes.
put those back up there for a second. Okay, so you're pointing to the arrow. You're pointing to what is it that you're pointing to? That the is it the gap between where the fencing is at to where that white? It looks like I don't know if it's a white barrier of some kind, or is it
This one?
between? Well, I don't know because go back to the original. Go back to the other picture I was just looking at. So you've got. It looks like you have a walkway there, right? So are you talking about between that walkway and the fence, going?
No, the arrow is pointing to this plane of the fence. So
Okay.
Just
Just to
there
the
are
fence
columns.
itself.
Yeah, to the fence itself.
Okay,
yeah.
all right, I just-
Yeah, this white column is one of those columns of the fence itself.
Yeah,
You
it's
can see
it's
them
hard to
here.
determine that that's a white column because of the way the photograph is.
Yeah,
So.
sorry, this staff took them up close so that you could
Okay.
see that there were gaps.
All right, so the gap, and I
In
just
some
want to make
cases
sure.
there were gaps, in some cases there were whole pieces missing.
Yeah, so you're on the right-hand side, my right, right there, you're pointing to what is supposedly the barrier that is supposed to be there, or part of the barrier that's supposed to be there, or
No,
not?
there's paneling here, there's a hole here.
Right, got
You
it,
can show
okay.
through, yeah.
All right, I just need to know in
So-
perspective to what we were talking about. Could you move that up a little bit, because I want to see the other two spots. So you see that the barrier on my right, which I guess is your right also, would be right there, the black barrier.
Yes,
But there's a gap between
there's
that.
a gap in between.
There's a
And-
gap.
yeah.
Where, I'm sorry. The gap is where?
There's a gap here,
Okay.
and there's a gap here.
Got it. Okay. And then on the left-hand side, the gap is in that opening that's there that you're pointing to.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank
One
you.
thing, I mean, staff didn't pull the bushes back to actually, yeah, but
Oh.
you could visibly see that there were holes.
I get it, and we know that trees and brush and bushes are not good sound barriers anyway.
Well, and they're not foam panels.
Right. That's true. That's the other part.
So,
Okay.
We're trying to be as strict interpretation of the words as possible.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So Ms. Dock actually sent the letter, and she acknowledged to me that Mr. Michelini at the time, who was representing them, did contact her, said they were working on it. I think they had a couple conversations. In the meantime, as this council is fully well aware, there have been several code changes to the noise ordinance, 3, I believe, in the last 3 years. Every enforcement case we have, I just want to put this out there, every potential enforcement case we have, we do review with the legal department before we'd ever bring it to you. We want to make sure we are on solid ground. Because in essence, what you're doing potentially is suspending someone's permit, which is part of their business. So in the meantime, Mr. McLeany was working on it as far as LaShawn was aware. The contact stopped. There were continual complaints. The noise code was changing over time. Staff did review it with legal department throughout time after that initial letter. We were advised to hold enforcement for the time being. And then finally, as of November of last year, I issued a letter based on advice from the legal department and all the evidence that we had. November 16th, 2018, I issued a letter saying essentially the same thing. You're still in violation. And there were additional pictures taken at the time, the day before, where you see you see there's still gaps. And there are outdoor speakers on a stage and other places. So we put that out there and advised that in order to avoid additional enforcement, they needed to comply immediately. Remove the speakers, fix your foam paneling. As far as staff, my conversations with staff, the contact didn't happen after that. LaShawn sent it to the clerk. Ms. Dock sent it to the clerk December 14th for a hearing, to set it for hearing. So here we are. Ultimately, what it boils down to is the foam paneling needs to be fixed and the speakers need to come down. Just for your information, I did drive by this morning on my way here just to see what it looked like. As I was driving by, there are still a couple places where the foam panels there's holes. I could see the wrought iron fencing. Their panels weren't on those spaces. And the stage and the speakers are gone, and there are some new, what appear to be structures built. I did pull all the permitting ahead of time just to see if they had pulled any permits recently, and they haven't pulled any permits recently, so I did contact the building official to go and look at it today to make sure that whatever they have done is compliant with code, because there are no active permits on the site. That's where we are today. We believe that ultimately they were in violation. They have been in violation. They've been put on notice a couple of times. What you're determining at this point is whether or not you can find them in violation, and they were at those times. We believe there's clear evidence that there was. I will turn it back over to the legal department or whatever's next on the list. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Kristen Moore, Legal Department. On a related issue, we are here today on the site plan things that they have not complied with. However, we believe that because these site plan issues are part of their noise attenuation plan, it would be relevant for council to understand that there have been noise complaints on the property. So we have Captain Neal here from Tampa Police Department that is going to give you just very briefly how many service calls they've had and that has been related to noise. Captain Neal.
Good morning, Captain Neal, District 3. Over the past 2 years, as previously discussed, we've responded to multiple service calls for service of noise complaints. As the codes have changed, we've used the meters and also just where we are now since August with what's plainly audible within that 100 feet. Since September, we've issued 7 citations and multiple warnings on these various complaints. We absolutely try education and warning first, and we adapted as the service calls came in and the code changed, but the complaints are still coming in. I don't have a particular number of the total complaints over the past 2 years, but I can just verify that there are multiple calls and we responded and educate and enforce as needed.
Any question for the captain? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Council, I think at this time it would be appropriate to hear from I believe that there is counsel here representing the property owner as well as the operator for the establishment, and I have spoken with them both. They are comfortable splitting the 15 minutes. I think they're going to split it amongst themselves, however they see fit.
Julia Mandel, law firm of Gray Robinson. I'm here in representing the property owner, not the tenant or Franklin Manor, but the property owner. My client is 912 Franklin LLC, and they do own most of that entire block. They want to reiterate a few things. One, Franklin Manor has been an incredible tenant, and they have really helped to have that part of downtown really come alive. The second thing they wanted to identify and make sure you knew is that upon the landlord my client learning that there were violations, they did work with the tenant and inform the tenant that they needed to go ahead and get those complied with. So the fact that that has been moving forward and is moving forward is something I wanted to make sure was within the record. I'm a little confused about the noise citations. When I looked in the records, I didn't see any noise citations. And Mr. Accardi, who is the owner of 912 Franklin LLC, is also not aware of any actual citations being issued. We do and are aware there have been complaints out there, but that there were no actual citations that were issued. So that is something we were not aware of, and if that's the case, we would like to be made aware of this. I don't know if Mr. Riccardi has anything else he wants to reiterate.
No, just again, I think Julia did a great job.
State your name, please.
I'm sorry?
State your name for the
Oh,
record.
Jason Accardi, I'm the managing partner of 912 Franklin LLC. I think Julia did a nice job. They've been a tremendous tenant for us in the north end of downtown. As you're aware, we had a tenant in there prior, and prior to that, we had Ho-Ho's that was at the restaurant. And they most recently just bought the Fly and have a new concept that have gone in there. And we've had no complaints as a landlord relationship there. And when we did get the complaint from the city, we immediately contacted our tenant, and we believe they've taken the corrective actions to rectify any situations with any neighbors and or any city violations. So that's all I have.
Question.
I know the other property owners here as well.
Good morning, Council, and we'll try to work through this as quickly as we can. I'm Catherine O'Donnelly, 2002 West Cleveland Street, Tampa, Florida, and I'm here on behalf of the Nocturnal Group. I know the property owner for the patio area specifically is also here, and he may want a moment to speak after I finish, but I thought I would just try to go ahead and get an overview in here. We really are focused on two very specific issues with the site plan, and we're here today to really talk about how we're moving forward. We're looking to move forward, be on the same page with the city, and proceed hand in hand in a cooperative, collaborative manner. So I do have significant updates to give you. One quick note on the discussion of noise violations. Really the two items that we're talking about, compliance with the site plan, those are separate from noise complaints that may have been called in. It wasn't specified in the police officer's testimony, but our understanding is that there have been no calls since November. And so I want to just go ahead and give you a little bit of background about Franklin Manor, and then again, the main focus is how we're moving forward, and we want to show you the changes that are underway at this point in time. First, just for background, I want to put up a photo so you can kind of see, you know, for those of you that may not have spent time there on the outdoor patio in the evening, this is sort of what you would expect on a typical night. In Franklin Manor, when they opened in 2016, I know staff spoke to this as well, and I was going to submit a copy into the record of the liquor license sign off just so that you have that in your hands.
Excuse me, is that the
Yes.
license or the permit?
The license. And not to harp on it too much, I think Kathy, you know, gave you an overview of the meaning, but I just wanted for background to kind of let you know that these folks believed that the city came out, inspected, saw what they were doing, and was aware that they were planning to have, you know, outdoor music and do this type of concept. And so I think, you know, some of what transpired, you know, a year later may have caused some confusion. Their position was, you know, that this is, you know, we're operating appropriately. We had been approved and moved forward. What I can't really speak to from that period in 2017 is what happened after the letter was issued. What we do know is the letter happened. Franklin Manor believed they were in compliance, and then nothing else occurred. There was no hearing brought forth, so they sort of continued operating. A lot of what has come to a head has occurred with a change to the noise ordinance last summer that really affected the Franklin Manor property, and as you may be aware, there is ongoing litigation with a neighboring property, which is not really relevant to what we're talking about, but I think gives you a flavor for sort of the attention that's being paid to the site at this time. And so with that, when I started working with these folks actually preceding these issues as they opened another concept, Osteria, and then as these noise-related issues kind of started to come to a head around October, I contacted the city proactively to just sort of check in and say, is there anything that we need to be doing, or should we be, meeting and having a discussion? I was not aware, and I don't think Franklin Manor was, that the 2017 letter was necessarily still an open issue, but that was communicated to us over a period of weeks. And in those discussions with the city, between myself and legal, I think we were all looking at the plan and looking at a note from 2011 that was, I would say, pretty unique and a little strangely worded concerning the use of basically cabana furniture. And so I think we all had to take a beat and really look closely at that. The legal department wanted to come back and let me know their position. They did that, and then very quickly regrouped with Franklin Manor and said these issues are definitely open, and so we had to decide what path to take, whether that was going to be, a conflict sort of path, litigious path, or submitting a new special use permit application. And the option that we have decided to proceed with is sort of rebranding this whole outdoor patio, and in doing that, really turning a page with the city, making sure that we're, again, all on the same page and moving forward. And so I want to just provide some photos so you can see where we are at right now. And I'm going to put this one up for you on the foam paneling. I will hand out this packet as well. There were, I think you saw in some of the photos that Kathy provided that there were actually like a couple of pieces that were missing, and so we may not have had communication on that point, but this morning when Kathy let me know that she had gone by the site, she pointed out that they were also concerned about some of these small areas that you can see, like it's where the railing is. And so, what we discussed this morning was that we're, again, coming in a very cooperative position, and I don't think we have any problem in trying to accommodate a request to look at how we can secure those, inch or couple inch gaps. But the sections that we understood, the city was saying these are just literally missing, those are complete. So I'm going to hand this out for you. And the other issue, and I also would note on that, I believe it was a couple months ago, we were sort of just trying to make sure, again, it was unclear there were open issues. So when I got involved and we were trying to work through this, we were really also trying to eliminate any open issues. And I had communicated, at least with city legal, so there may have been some misunderstanding on that foam paneling issue because I had sent a photo along. And so, but that's, again, it's fine. We are happy to cooperate and go back out to the site and figure out what needs to happen to get on the same page. I think on the more significant issue regarding this note on the plan from 2011, this is where there's really a more significant update to provide. There were speakers that existed outside from the inception of Franklin Manor. Those have all been taken down, and they're in the process of finishing up the cabana structures. This is not focusing. I'm going to hand it out for y'all.
Let me stop you for a second. Council, it's 12 o'clock. What would you like to do?
I'm
We
close.
have others, and I'm not trying to change the rules or anything, but we have a full house that does not pertain to this one, I would imagine.
Yeah.
12:30 is not going to make it. I don't mind listening to his case in breaking, but.
12:30 ain't gonna do it. We got quite a few more of these hearings on the agenda. So, So do we want to break for lunch at this time and come back?
Whatever you say, Mr. Chairman, you're the leader here.
Come back at 1:15. We come back at 1:30.
Yeah, we'll cover it.
Chair, are you suggesting we break down and come back at 1:30?
But if I might just make one comment, I know there are a number of folks who are here to speak on this item. I think one might even have a newborn infant.
But here's our problem. We got a long agenda.
I
And we got
understand.
quite a few people that not gonna speak on this issue, gonna speak on other issues.
Of course.
And it's not fair to have this going on and they don't get a chance. So,
I only have one thing, not regarding the extension of time, but as I look at the soundproof wall, sort of, is there anything in the regulation that says what width it has to be?
No, sir. And, you know, in looking at some of the notes on this plan, I think my view is that probably if we were going through this exercise today, I don't know that it would have been drafted in this manner. I think it would have been a lot clearer. But I've not heard that there's an issue with the material that's being used.
And I'm asking
It's
this for
just-
protection of
yeah.
both.
Yeah, it simply
Petition
talks.
holder, or in this case, the liquor holder, and the neighbors.
Sure, sure. Well, the plan does not call for any specific, there's no specific dimensions or anything like that.
And the reason I ask is that this crazy guy does things at the house to make sure that sometimes I get insulation that I don't necessarily have to have, but I want to test things out. And I
Absolutely.
realize that I've done different things with different width, and different width do different things to the house.
Absolutely, and I would add, again, this is kind of off, it gets off of the direct issues at hand, but, I mean, we have
understand.
employed a noise expert and gone through a lot of very technical analysis of how to make sure that we're being good neighbors, but at this point today, there are no speakers. So it's kind of we're moving forward in a different direction.
You're verifying there, thank you, sir. You're verifying there are no amplified sound outside?
Right, everything's been taken down.
And, okay, I want to make sure that that's what I understood
Yes.
from you.
And, wait, I'm sorry, hold on a second.
all right.
I know, I'm still asking questions,
Oh,
okay?
wait.
Maybe we should, before they
Yeah.
answer another question, let's figure out the time, and then we can go forward with
I think
with the
so.
answer to this last question.
Yeah, and I can
Wait,
show
wait,
you.
wait.
Hang on, Ms. O'Donnelly.
sorry.
Why don't we, I would suggest that after she answers the question, let's break at 12:07 and then 12:08, and go and come back at 1:30.
1:30?
Yeah, probably be the easiest way of doing
I
it.
agree.
If you could answer the question, and then we'll break
Yeah.
at that time.
I know we have some people who may not be able to come back, in particular the owner of the patio, who I know is very anxious to speak, but I think, I just got a clarification from our litigation counsel that I think there's like, the speaker that's like the size of your hand, like that you would have at your house, that there's something like that in the bar area, but what we're really talking about, I think the issue that brought us to this place were these speakers, which this is a picture of them in storage. If you can see that, I'm putting that up on the Almo.
All right, if y'all
But
allow,
I know you're
if
trying to-
if y'all allow us to get out of here, we're gonna come back at 2, so.
I'm just trying to see if you'll.
stay at
Council, if
1:30.
I may, Kristen Moore, Legal Department, it sounds like you're inclined to go ahead and break, and I think that's appropriate. However, I know the owner, there are 2 property owners that are involved in the same alcoholic beverage permit. The owner of the patio will not be able to return at 1:30, he has stated. If you could hear from him briefly before you
What
break.
patio?
So there's one.
The patio
alcohol-
is one owner?
The alcoholic beverage permit covers an indoor area and an outdoor
Let me,
area.
I don't think y'all heard our message. If we keep extending this, that means you're gonna extend the time for us to come back. We understand all of that.
I do understand that, Councilman Reddick, but the owner, who is an interested party here, has asked to be heard briefly.
Can we
And
give
I
him-
would ask that you entertain that.
One or 2 minutes, I mean,
Is our
just,
legal?
Well, and here, here's the thing, I don't understand, okay, we do our best to try and accommodate everyone, okay? They have an interest in being here, okay? Our interest is to make sure that we hear them, but at the same time, if they can't make it, that's not our concern, and I apologize, but that's true, okay? We're trying to do our best here.
All right.
So.
Thank you. Sorry to keep
we'll
that. I'll
give-
sit
we'll-
down.
We'll provide him 1 minute before we adjourn.
Thank you, Council.
Go in recess.
Well, hi, Alon Michael Isaac on behalf of 914.
Franklin Street. My mother and I are the property owners. If it will accommodate you, I have to be in circuit court at 1:30. I got you. So I come back on a different day. I just can't come back this afternoon.
Mr. Isaac, make
So-
your point.
So this particular area in the intersection of Franklin and Tyler is quickly becoming one of the most popular locations. Franklin Manor is one of the hottest nightclubs. There are restaurants that are opening across the street, one block north, one block south. Right next door is Lit Lounge, which is under renovation, owned by the Prieto family. My mother owns the building across the street from the patio, which we are now renovating, and there's substantial interest. Over the next 12 to 18 months, I think this particular area of town is going to take on a very, very different look. The anchor is Franklin Manor. So it will harm the development of businesses if you take the extreme sanction of suspension. It sounds to me from what I'm hearing and a lot of the information that's come out before you, this is the first time we're hearing it with regard to the violations. But it sounds like the Franklin Manor Group is taking positive steps toward coming into compliance. And the one thing that I'm suggesting to this council is that you not harm the business entity that's currently there and the business entities that are now coming into the area, because if Franklin Manor is suspended for 30 days, that will damage the ambiance of that particular area and will have future effects. I am concerned that as a property owner, the notices that council is indicating were sent were not given to us. As owners of the property, they may have sent notice to the business entity, but we got notice of the hearing today, but we've never gotten any notice of any violations of city code. Certainly, if as a property owner, I'm put on notice that my tenant is in violation, I would take affirmative steps to ensure that some sort of remedy is being taken care of. We were never noticed of any of these prior violations, and I think that's problematic. The other, and the last point I'd like to make is, while I'm not insensitive to the needs and the privacy of the residents in the area, I think it's important to understand that for those individuals who want to live a cosmopolitan life, they have to have a reasonable understanding that there will be greater noise than the quiet ambiance of suburban living. And this is an area that is very cosmopolitan. And so we're asking that you not take any sanctions against this group, since they're making a very good faith effort to come into compliance. And I hope that you'll take into consideration the impact that a suspension would have on the area and the business owners and the business owners who are now coming into that area. Thank you.
And we're coming
Oh,
back at
don't go anywhere. Hang on. Could I ask just a quick question? You are the owner of the patio. Mr. Accardi owns the building?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you own just the outdoor patio?
Yes, sir. My mother and I are
Thank you.
co-owners of the
I
outdoor
wanted to make
patio.
sure that so we've got a lot
We
more
understand.
things to talk about later on. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we
And then
stand
we'll come back
in
at
recess to 1:30.
We're gonna go 1:45. 1:30, got it.